Rick building a disintegration laser to kill himself after Unity leaves and passing out drunk inches from the death beam showed depression isn't cool, nihilism, but actual suicidal ideation. Dozens of naked Mortys, strapped to a torture dome, being constantly stabbed to create a pattern of agony, revealed what Ricks do when left unchecked. Rick Prime dropping a bomb through a portal that murdered young Rick's wife Diane and daughter Beth in their garage turned the Szechuan sauce rant into deflection from genuine trauma. And those are just 3 of the devastating Rick and Morty moments in this video. Can you imagine all the existentially horrifying stuff there is to uncover when we dive deep into 3+ hours of Rick and Morty iceberg over the next few hours? I was certainly shocked by some of the stuff I found when I made this video, so if you're ready to be blown away by what's about to come, sit back, relax, maybe grab some Szechuan sauce if McDonald's hasn't discontinued it again, and let's begin. Let's begin. So the pilot episode is basically what happens when someone says, "Let's make Back to the Future," but Doc Brown is an alcoholic who doesn't care if Marty lives or dies. The entire show's thesis statement gets delivered in 22 minutes, and honestly, most families would have called CPS by minute 3. The pilot episode introduces us to Rick Sanchez as he stumbles into his grandson's bedroom at like 2 a.m., absolutely hammered, spilling booze on the kid's bed while dragging him out by the ankle. This is our introduction to the smartest man in the universe, not solving equations or building robots, but kidnapping a 14-year-old for a drunk joyride. The show immediately establishes that Rick's genius doesn't make him a good person, which is kind of refreshing in a TV landscape where smart characters usually get a free pass on being terrible. Looking at You, every medical drama where the brilliant doctor is allowed to be a sociopath because he saves lives. Rick's flying ship is cobbled together from garage junk, which is either incredibly impressive or a severe safety violation, probably both. Then Rick drops the bomb, literally. He tells Morty he built a neutrino bomb to create a whole fresh start by wiping out humanity, and his plan involves saving Jessica from math class to repopulate Earth like some demented Noah's Ark situation. Morty's understandably freaking out, and when he tries to take control of the ship, they're screaming over each other in this chaotic word salad that sounds like what happens when you put 2 anxious people in a pressure cooker. Rick eventually lands in a desert surrounded by empty beer cans, which is either the saddest character detail or the funniest, depending on your relationship with alcoholism, and claims it was all a test to make Morty more assertive. Then he immediately passes out drunk while the bomb stays armed. This is parenting at its absolute finest, folks. The real horror show starts when we see Morty at the breakfast table the next morning, face planting into his eggs because he got 0 sleep. Summer thinks he's gross, Beth thinks he's sick, and Jerry's just trying to have a normal family meal while Rick casually announces, "There is no God." Summer, like he's commenting on the weather. Rick then gives this speech about school being a waste of time, calling it a place where people bump into each other, and guy up front says 2 + 2. People in the back say 4. He's basically describing education as the world's most boring improv show, which, fair, but also maybe don't tell your grandson to drop out at age 14. The speech ends with Rick complimenting Beth's eggs, saying he wishes her dead mom could eat them, which is the kind of emotional manipulation that would make a therapist rich. At school, Morty's so sleep-deprived he hallucinates Jessica, showing him her breasts, which she calls "my little Mortys" in the fantasy, because this show has no chill. He then proceeds to grope his math teacher in real life while still dreaming, and Mr. Goldenfold just lets it happen for 5 more minutes. This is the kind of scene that makes you go, wait, can they show this? Yes, they can, and they did. Frank the bully shows up with a knife threatening Morty over saying, "morning," because apparently Frank's poor and touchy about it, before Rick appears, freezes Frank solid, and drags Morty through a portal. Summer walks by, tries to flirt with frozen Frank, and he shatters into a million pieces, killing him instantly. The principal later insists there's no evidence a Latino student did it, which is possibly the darkest throwaway line in the whole episode. The real nightmare fuel comes when Rick and Morty go to Dimension 35C. Morty's legs are literally dangling through dimensional rifts while Rick rambles about mega seeds and adventure. When a monster appears, Rick immediately screams, "It's gonna kill us. We're gonna die." So much for the experienced adventurer energy. Later, Rick gives Morty grappling shoes, but forgets to mention you have to turn them on. So, Morty plummets off a cliff, screaming, bones breaking against rocks, in what sounds genuinely painful. Rick heals him with future medicine, then immediately reveals his portal gun is dead because he spent too much time hooking up with young women in a dimension that stopped aging. This is Rick's version of, "sorry I'm late, traffic was bad." The solution? Morty needs to shove the mega seeds way up inside your butthole to smuggle them through interdimensional customs. Rick's reasoning is that his own rectum is too loose from doing this repeatedly, which is information nobody needed. The customs escape is pure chaos. Morty's running around with seeds in his rear end. Rick's telling him to shoot robots, who are very clearly living beings with families, and they're destroying what appears to be an interdimensional facility in the process. Morty inhales mystery hookah smoke and watches a life-form speedrun existence from fetus to rotting corpse in 3 seconds. Fun! They crash through a portal into the school cafeteria, landing in front of Jessica, and Morty tries to play it cool with a "my Ferrari's in the shop" joke that absolutely does not land. The episode ends with Rick nearly getting sent to a nursing home, but he saves himself by making Morty look smart using the mega seeds dissolving in his butt. Everyone's impressed that Morty can suddenly do thermodynamics, and Jerry backs down immediately because he wears the pants now, apparently. Then Rick reveals the intelligence boost is temporary, and Morty's about to lose motor skills and brain function for 72 hours. Morty collapses into a seizure while Rick monologues about their future adventures, and the show literally ends with Rick ranting RickandMortyAdventures.com, all 100 years, every minute, while his grandson convulses on the floor. This pilot basically said, "We're going to put a child in dangerous situations, make jokes about his compromised rectum, kill his classmates, and explore the cosmic horror of infinite dimensions where nothing matters," and somehow got greenlit. The show promised dark sci-fi comedy, where the smartest person alive uses his intelligence exclusively for selfish purposes and drags his anxious grandson along because he's good camouflage against enemies. Morty's legs dangling through dimensional portals, while monsters chase them, is the perfect metaphor for how the show treats childhood innocence. It's something to be stretched, broken, and left hanging in the void, while the adults make terrible decisions. 22 minutes in, and Rick and Morty established it would never pretend adventures are wholesome, or that genius justifies cruelty. The neutrino bomb might have stayed armed, but the real explosion was this pilot detonating every expectation of what animated family shows could be. Rick's pilot kidnapping looked bad until Rick Potion number 9 had Morty burying his own dead body in the backyard. Rick Potion number 9 is what happens when you combine a high school dance, a weaponized love potion, and zero concern for consequences. The entire episode starts as a typical nerd wants popular girl story and ends with our main characters literally burying their own corpses in the backyard while their family fights off flesh monsters in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Normal Tuesday for this show, apparently. This is Season 1, Episode 6, and it permanently changed what the show could get away with. The episode was written by Justin Roiland and directed by Steven Sandoval, and honestly, they must have pitched this in the writer's room like, what if we just never go back, before someone realized they were serious. The episode opens with Morty pining after Jessica because she's pretty and exists, which is basically the entire criteria for 14-year-old crushes. Jerry tries to give his son romantic advice by talking about how he fell in love with a young woman named Your Mom, great dad joke, but Rick immediately interrupts to remind everyone that said romance resulted in teenage pregnancy. Rick then delivers this absolutely cheerful speech about how love is just chemicals that make animals breed, and once that's done, the passion fades and you're stuck in a failing marriage. He's talking about Jerry and Beth's marriage, specifically by the way, not just philosophizing. Jerry insists his marriage is fine, while Rick casually mentions that even he can see Beth is looking for an exit. This is the show's version of family dinner conversation. Morty gets depressed and asks Rick for a love potion based on vole DNA because voles mate for life, which sounds romantic until you remember these are rodents we're talking about. Rick makes the potion. Morty asks if anything can go wrong, and Rick says no. Then immediately after Morty leaves, Rick adds, unless she has the flu, but shrugs it off like this is a minor detail. Spoiler alert, this is not a minor detail. At the flu season dance, already a terrible concept for a school event, Morty uses the love potion on Jessica, and it works perfectly. Her pupils dilate, and she's immediately into him, which would be sweet if this wasn't essentially a roofie situation. Brad gets jealous and tries to fight Morty, but then Jessica sneezes. The potion has piggybacked onto the flu virus and gone airborne, infecting Brad, who immediately starts making advances on Morty. Then, Jessica's friend gets infected. Then, Principal Vagina. The serum enters the punch bowl and air vents, and suddenly everyone at the dance wants Morty. Not in a cute way either, in a violently competing to claim him kind of way that's genuinely disturbing when you think about the implications. Morty realizes what's happening and manages to escape to Rick's car, where Rick admits he messed up. His solution? An antidote made from praying mantis DNA, because mantises are the opposite of voles, since the females eat the males after mating. This is Rick's understanding of biology, by the way. Just pick the opposite animal and hope it cancels out. The antidote makes everything worse. Now everyone still wants Morty, but also wants to eat him afterward, and they're growing mantis features and extra limbs. The virus spreads across the entire planet within hours. Meanwhile, Beth gets called into work at the horse hospital, and Jerry becomes convinced she's having an affair because of what Rick said earlier. Beth had told Jerry that loving him is like building a homeless shelter, work nobody wants to do, but people who care will do it anyway. This is apparently Beth's version of a love language. Jerry drives to the hospital and encounters the apocalypse on the highway, finds a shotgun, and starts blasting his way through mutant hordes like he's in a zombie movie. He bursts into Beth's workplace with a crowbar, beats her coworker Davin to death. Davin had just been infected and was trying to take Beth to Morty, and declares, "God's turning people into insect monsters. Beth, I'm the one beating them to death. Thank me." This is somehow the most romantic Jerry has ever been. Rick makes a third serum using DNA from koala, rattlesnake, chimpanzee, cactus, shark, golden retriever, and dinosaur, which he claims will add up to normal humanity. When Morty questions this logic, Rick gets defensive and asks if Morty wants to see his math, because apparently randomly mixing animal DNA is now mathematics. They release the third virus, and some people do turn back to normal for about 5 seconds before transforming into grotesque flesh blobs that Rick names Cronenbergs, after the body horror filmmaker. The entire planet is now overrun with these disfigured monsters. Rick sarcastically tells Morty, "You're welcome for making him the mayor of I Told You So Town." Here's where the episode goes from dark comedy to genuinely disturbing. Rick and Morty are sitting on a rooftop at dawn, looking at the ruined world around them. Morty's having a complete breakdown about destroying civilization, and Rick's trying to deflect blame by pointing out that Morty asked for a data salt potion in the first place. They argue about who's more responsible, the kid who wanted to impress a girl or the genius who kept making it worse, until Rick reveals his emergency solution. The scene cuts to an alternate dimension where everything got fixed. Morty's congratulating Rick on saving the world when Rick asks for a screwdriver to finish his invention. Rick turns the screw 3 times and the device explodes, violently killing both of them. Their corpses are burnt, bloody, and very, very dead. Then our Rick and Morty step through a portal into this garage. Morty starts panicking at the sight of their dead bodies until Rick explains there are infinite realities, and in a few dozen of them he fixed everything. They just needed to find one where they died right after fixing things so they could take their place. Rick's solution to ruining one Earth is just moving to a different Earth where they're already dead. They drag their own corpses into the backyard and bury them while Summer eats breakfast inside, completely unaware. Morty shovels dirt onto his own dead face with this 1,000-yard stare that suggests he's processing some serious trauma. He walks back into the house afterward, looks around at this new home that's identical to his old one, and sits on the couch in complete shell shock. The episode ends with the original Beth, Jerry, and Summer living in an armored van in the Cronenberg wasteland, roasting mutant flesh over a fire. Summer's doing her own TV show in a cardboard box, recreating the USS Indianapolis speech from Jaws, weirdly enough. While Beth and Jerry admit they're actually happier now, they don't miss Rick and Morty at all. The apocalypse saved their marriage because they finally have a common enemy and purpose. Then Cronenberg Rick and Cronenberg Morty appear from a dimension they ruined by turning everyone into normal humans, making them the monsters in their world. It's symmetry, but horrifying. This episode did something unprecedented for television. It made the main characters literally replaceable. From this point forward, the Rick and Morty we follow aren't the original characters from the pilot. Those versions are still in the Cronenberg dimension. Beth, Jerry, and Summer have been replaced by their dimensional counterparts, who don't share the same memories. The show references this in later episodes, particularly Rickin Minutes, when Morty shows Summer the graves in the backyard, but mostly just continues like nothing happened. The casual acceptance of this situation is more disturbing than the body horror. Rick's willingness to abandon an entire reality and replace his family members suggests he genuinely sees them as interchangeable parts. The Summer abortion subplot gets mentioned when Jerry's giving Morty romantic advice at the beginning. Rick immediately cuts in with, "I should get her pregnant, and then she'll have to marry me," to remind everyone that Summer only exists because Beth got pregnant at 17. Later in the series, Summer discovers through interdimensional cable that in timelines where she wasn't born, her parents were successful and happy. The episode plants this seed that Summer's existence might be the thing that ruined her parents' potential, which is an absolutely brutal thing to imply about a teenage girl. She's essentially learning she was an accident that derailed 2 lives, and the show treats this as background information rather than a huge deal. Rick Potion number 9 established that Rick and Morty could reset anything, including the protagonists themselves, and the show would just keep going. Most TV shows treat their main characters as sacred and irreplaceable. This episode said, actually, we can kill them and replace them with dimensional copies and nothing fundamentally changes. That's either brilliant or nihilistic, depending on your perspective. Probably both. The image of Morty burying himself in the backyard became iconic for the show. It's the moment where Rick and Morty stopped being a wacky sci-fi comedy and started being a show about cosmic horror disguised as family. Sitcom. The fact that they did this in episode 6 of season 1 shows they were never planning to play it safe. Replacing yourself after destroying a planet seems bad, until Summer discovers her parents' best lives never included her existing at all. Rickin Minutes is what happens when you give a family interdimensional cable and goggles that let them spy on their better lives in alternate timelines. The episode starts as a goofy anthology of improvised commercials and ends with a teenager learning she was almost aborted. Just your standard family sitcom stuff. This is season 1, episode 8. The episode opens with the family watching a reality dating show and Rick declaring it stupid and meaningless. Jerry challenges Rick to show them good TV, so Rick breaks their cable box and upgrades it to access programming from every conceivable reality. The interdimensional cable shows them Ants in My Eyes Johnson, a salesman who can't see or feel anything. Quick mystery, killers confess immediately, and shows where everyone's name starts with Shmla. These sketches were actually improvised by Justin Roiland in the booth, creating this weird contrast between absurdist humor and the family drama happening simultaneously. While Rick and Morty watch shows about trunk people and Mr. Top Hat Jones getting disemboweled by children for cereal, the rest of the family uses ocular devices to view their alternate lives. Jerry sees himself doing cocaine with Johnny Depp. Beth sees herself as a successful human surgeon instead of a horse surgeon. Both are thriving in timelines where they made different choices, and you can see the exact moment they realize their current lives are the bad ending. Summer tries the goggles and sees nothing. Beth accidentally admits it's because, if your father and I achieved our dreams, there's a chance you weren't even born. Summer just learned that in every timeline where her parents are happy and successful, she doesn't exist. Her birth is directly correlated with her parents' failure. Summer keeps searching and finds one timeline where she exists and her parents are happy. They're playing Yahtzee. That's it. The best case scenario for her existence is boring mediocrity. The argument escalates when Jerry drops the bomb. What if that loser Jerry hadn't talked me out of the abortion? Summer's standing right there. Beth's response is peak. Beth, everyone thinks about it. Obviously, I'm the version of me that didn't do it. So, you're welcome. Summer decides to leave, going to move to the southwest and do something with turquoise, which Jerry correctly identifies as code for crystal meth. A teenager just learned she ruined her parents' lives by existing. Morty finds Summer packing and takes her to the window to show her his grave in the backyard. He explains that he and Rick destroyed their original world and took the place of dead versions of themselves. Every morning he eats breakfast 20 yards from his own rotting corpse. Then Morty delivers the show's thesis. I'm better than your brother. I'm a version of your brother you can trust when he says don't run. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV? This speech reframes nihilism as liberating. If nothing matters and we're all going to die anyway, why not stick around and watch TV with your family? It's the most depressing pep talk ever delivered, and it works. Summer comes downstairs, and they all watch ball fondlers together. The cruelty of this episode is showing the family what they could have had. Most shows would show characters' worse timelines to make them feel better, but Rick and Morty does the opposite. Jerry and Beth see their peak potential, fame, success, career fulfillment, and have to sit with the knowledge that having Summer killed all of that. Beth admits loving Jerry is work, like building a homeless shelter that nobody wants to do but some people force themselves to anyway. The interdimensional cable serves as absurdist coping mechanism throughout all of this. While the family's falling apart, Rick and Morty watch commercials about fake doors, Gazorpa Zorpfield, aggressive Garfield parody, and Two Brothers, a movie trailer that keeps adding random elements and never explains the plot. These sketches are aggressively meaningless white noise for existential dread. The episode ends with Beth drunk in the kitchen, wearing the goggles, seeing alternate Jerry confess he wishes she hadn't gotten the abortion. She takes off the goggles, runs to reel Jerry, and they kiss while Rick asks if anyone wants to watch ball fondlers. The Smith family decides to stay together because they're already here, and everybody's going to die anyway, so why not? It's the most depressing happy ending ever, which is exactly what this show does best. Summer learning about her near abortion seems merciful compared to the Citadel strapping naked Mortys to a torture dome as living security systems. Close Rick counters of the Rick kind is what happens when the show asks, what if there was an entire society of Ricks who all hate each other? And the answer is a fascist government that uses Mortys as human shields. The episode opens with a Rick getting shot in the head at breakfast and his Morty getting kidnapped, which is a real mood killer when you're trying to eat flying saucer pancakes. This is Season 1, Episode 10, and it introduces the Citadel of Ricks, along with the show's most terrifying concept, weaponized child suffering as a security system. The cold open shows evil Rick and evil Morty portal into another dimension's Smith house, murder that dimension's Rick execution style, and drag their Morty through a portal while the family screams. Then, the opening credits play like nothing happened, which is the show's way of saying, buckle up, this one's different. Our Rick is eating anniversary pancakes when 3 armed Ricks portal into the kitchen and arrest him for murdering 27 other Ricks across different timelines. Jerry tries to intervene and immediately gets frozen solid because the Ricks have a neutralize the Jerry protocol, which honestly seems like standard operating procedure for any organization. The Citadel of Ricks is basically the United Nations, except everyone's the same person, and they all hate themselves. Rick explains it as, a few thousand versions of me had the ingenious idea of banding together like a herd of cattle or a school of fish, or those people who answer questions on Yahoo Answers, which is the most Rick way. It's possible to describe safety in numbers. The Citadel is crawling with infinite Ricks and Mortys, and there are salespeople hawking Morty dazzlers, fashion accessories for your Morty, and Morty insurance policies. One Rick tries to sell insurance by saying, every year hundreds of Mortys are injured, like Mortys are a commodity that needs coverage, because they are, apparently. This society formed because Ricks have so many enemies, galactic terrorists, intergalactic governments, basically anyone with their head up their rear end, that even infinite genius needs backup. The Council of Ricks charges C-137 with the murders and presents evidence. His portal gun history shows he visited every dimension where murders occurred. Rick claims he's being framed. The Council sentences him to the machine of unspeakable doom, which swaps your conscious and unconscious minds and stabs your balls every 10 seconds, and Rick immediately breaks free and runs. The chase sequence is pure absurdity. They run through Butt World, a dimension of giant butt mountains, Pizza Dimension, where pizzas order people on the phone, Greasy Grandma World, exactly what it sounds like, Phone Dimension, where phones order chairs on pizzas, and Doopadoo Dimension creatures, just saying Doopadoo repeatedly. Each dimension is more ridiculous than the last, which is the show saying, yeah, we can afford to throw away 10 great concepts in 30 seconds, because we have infinite universes to work with. Rick and Morty end up in Chair Dimension, eating at a restaurant run by chairs, and Rick casually drops the bomb that Morty is camouflage. Ricks have distinct brainwaves due to their genius, and the best way to hide from radar is standing near someone with complementary brainwaves that cancel yours out. When a Rick is with a Morty, the genius waves get cancelled out by the Morty waves. Rick explains while clearing his throat awkwardly. Morty asks if it's because their personalities are different, desperately hoping for a wholesome explanation, and Rick just moves on. Every Rick has a Morty, because Mortys are human cloaking devices. That's it. That's the relationship. All those adventures, all that bonding. Functionally, Morty is a jacket that makes Rick invisible to his enemies. They track the real killer to a dome covered top to bottom in naked Mortys strapped to the surface, being tortured with contraptions that constantly stab their sides. The screaming is non-stop. Rick explains that one Morty hides you from bureaucrats, but you get a whole matrix of Mortys and put them in agonizing pain that creates a pattern that can hide even from other Ricks. He admits he fiddled with this concept once, on paper, and adds, you could accomplish the same result with like 5 Mortys and a jumper cable, before backtracking when Morty glares at him. The Morty torture dome is the show's most disturbing visual. It's not played for laughs, there's no joke to soften it, just dozens of children in agony as a security system. This is what Ricks do when left unchecked. Meanwhile, back home, Jerry's bonding with Doofus Rick, the nicest Rick in the multiverse, who everyone makes fun of for being kind. Doofus Rick is genuinely impressed by Jerry's advertising career and calls him wise, and Jerry finally finds a Rick who doesn't treat him like garbage. Other Ricks mock Jerry for hanging out with the worst Rick of them all, but Jerry tells Doofus Rick that makes him the best. They make ovenless brownies together and hug. It's the sweetest subplot in an episode about child torture, which is very on brand for this show. Inside the dome, Morty gets thrown into a prison with dozens of other captured Mortys, some of whom have formed a religion worshipping the one true Morty. Morty gives them a speech about how they're not defined by their relationships to Rick, and their destiny is their own, which accidentally makes them think he is the one true Morty. Can't catch a break. The Mortys rebel, break free, and swarm evil Rick, tearing him apart. Rick gets freed and shuts down the Morty shield, releasing all the tortured Mortys. The council shows up, clears Rick's name, and offers him a voucher for a free replacement Morty, in the event that your current Morty should, which Rick takes anyway, despite the implication. The episode's final reveal is that evil Rick was being remote controlled the whole time. The council finds a receiver chip in his brain, and the show cuts to evil Morty, removing his eye patch to reveal the transmitter, crushing it underfoot, and disappearing into the crowd of rescued Mortys. For the Damaged Coda by Blonde Redhead plays the song that became synonymous with evil Morty, and the episode ends with the revelation that a Morty was the real killer all along. This 15-year-old just orchestrated the deaths of 27 Ricks, framed C-137, and escaped without anyone knowing. Close Rick Counters explores what happens when infinite versions of you form a society, and the answer is bureaucratic nightmare with a side of fascism. The Council of Ricks became exactly what they were hiding from, a government that oppresses and exploits others for safety and convenience. They use Mortys as disposable tools, mock the kind Rick, and sentence people to ball-stabbing machines without solid evidence. Rick calls them out for this, saying, "You wanted to be safe from the government, so you became a stupid government." Every Rick there is less Rick than C-137, because they compromised their individualism for security. The Morty revelation reframes everything. All those Mortys being tortured, used as shields, sold as accessories. One of them got sick of it and became more dangerous than any Rick. Evil Morty didn't win through genius or strength, but through patience and playing the role everyone expected. He was controlled, harmless, just another Morty in the crowd. The show planted this twist in episode 10 and didn't resolve it until season 3, creating one of the longest-running plot threads. The episode argues that when you create infinite versions of yourself, you're bound to hate most of them because they represent everything you could have been if you'd made different choices. The Citadel is self-loathing made manifest, and Doofus Rick proves that kindness makes you an outcast in a society built on ego. Evil Morty, escaping into a crowd of rescued Mortys, looked like the end until he returned as their democratic savior and immediately executed everyone who knew his secret. The Ricklantis Mixup is the episode where Rick and Morty says, "Forget the adventure we promised in the title. We're doing political commentary now." Rick and Morty are gearing up for Atlantis when some Rick with a clipboard shows up, asking for donations to rebuild the Citadel, and Rick tells him to get lost because he murdered everyone in charge last season. The episode then completely abandons our main characters to follow random Citadel residents, which is either genius or the biggest bait and switch in television. This is season 3, episode 7. The Citadel is recovering from when Rick overthrew the council and crashed their economy, so now it's being rebuilt into a democracy, which is code for same exploitation, different branding. The episode follows a factory worker, Rick, a rookie cop. Rick partnered with veteran cop Morty, 4 Morty students, and a Morty running for president. Rick dismisses the place by saying anyone still living there is either stupid or one of the unfortunate millions held hostage by their terrible ideas, which is basically him describing every society that's ever existed. The framing device matters. While this dystopian nightmare unfolds, our Rick and Morty are having the time of their lives in Atlantis, getting mermaid puss. The contrast is the point. Our protagonists get to dimension hop and have adventures while everyone else is stuck in the system, which is either a metaphor for privilege or just the show being mean to its side characters, probably both. The simple Rick commercial opens the episode and immediately establishes we're in horror territory disguised as capitalism. There's a Rick who works with wood instead of science and realized the best thing he'd ever make is his daughter. The commercial shows him filming young Beth blowing out birthday candles, crying happy tears. Then Simple Rick is revealed to be strapped into a chair at a wafer cookie factory, that one memory playing on loop while machinery harvests the happiness chemicals his brain produces. "Come home to the impossible flavor of your own completion," the narrator says cheerfully, like they didn't just show you the Matrix, but for extracting dad emotions. They're literally selling commodified joy. Rick J22 works at this factory stamping logos on wafers for 15 years. When his supervisor gets promoted, Rick J22 thinks he might get the job. Instead, they give it to Cool Rick, some new guy who does finger guns and says, "Check me out." While watching the presidential debate, Rick J22 hears candidate Morty talking about inequality and snaps. He grabs a weapon, shoots his supervisor dead, and takes the flavor core chamber hostage with Simple Rick, screaming, "They told us we were special because we were Ricks, but they stripped us of anything that made us unique." The factory owner, Rick D. Sanchez III, shows up looking like the Monopoly Man's evil twin, purple suit, top hat, gold cane, gives a speech about Citadel freedom, and walks Rick J22 down the assembly line while workers cheer. He gives Rick J22 car keys, presenting him with freedom, then immediately shoots him in the back of the head. The next commercial reveals they hooked dying Rick J22 into the Simple Rick machine, harvesting his brief moment of hope for new Simple Rick Freedom Wafer Selects. The narrator says, "Come home to the unique flavor of shattering the grand illusion." Rick J22's breakdown became the next cookie flavor. Every attempt at escape gets monetized. Cop Morty's storyline is Training Day, but everyone's the same species. He's a veteran cop partnered with rookie cop Rick, who still believes in helping people. Cop Morty immediately establishes himself as the worst kind of cop. During a Morty Pride parade, he tasers protesters and calls them animals. When investigating a robbery in Mortytown, Cop Morty interrogates Street Mortys by pretending to be chill. When one calls him a sidekick, Cop Morty snaps, pins the Morty against a wall, and shoves a gun in his mouth, screaming, "Call me a sidekick one more time." He's so insecure about being a Morty cop that he's become a monster. They bust the Mortytown locos, making bootleg portal fluid, and a psychopath Morty stabs Cop Rick. Cop Morty helps his partner to the car with a touching moment, then goes back inside and blows up the building, with all the handcuffed Mortys inside. When Cop Rick asks what happened, Cop Morty says, "Same old story, Mortys killing Mortys, covering up murder." Later, Cop Morty takes Cop Rick to meet Big Morty, a crime boss who pays them protection money. Cop Rick refuses the bribe and tries to arrest everyone. During the shootout, Cop Morty does a crying manipulation, saying he just wants to be a regular kid. The second Cop Rick lowers his gun. Cop Morty shoots Big Morty. Cop Rick immediately shoots Cop Morty. The whole arc speedruns police corruption in 10 minutes. The presidential election storyline is where the episode shows its hand. Candidate Morty runs against 5 Rick candidates, including Juggling Rick, whose platform is literally juggling, and Retired General Rick, whose platform is more lasers. The Rick news anchors treat candidate Morty like a joke, doing baby voices. Then comes the debate. The moderator asks candidate Morty to solve the divide between Ricks and Mortys, and the audience laughs. But candidate Morty delivers a speech saying he doesn't see a divide between Ricks and Mortys. He sees a divide between people who like the Citadel divided and everyone else. While he talks, the show cuts to other storylines. He mentions schools that teach conformity, streets where Mortys fight each other instead of injustice, and factories where Ricks work for nothing. Right as he says the Citadel's problem is the Ricks and Mortys feeding on the Citadel's debt, Rick J22 shoots his supervisor. When candidate Morty says, "You are outnumbered," the audience explodes. His campaign manager is shocked. Candidate Morty responds, "I know, that's why you're fired." Campaign manager Morty later gets a dossier of secrets about candidate Morty from investigator Rick. At a campaign event, campaign manager Morty shoots candidate Morty, but doesn't kill him. Bodyguards drag him to an airlock while he screams that candidate Morty must be stopped. They tell him candidate Morty already won the election, then shoot him into space with all the evidence. 4 Morty students skip graduation to find the wishing portal, where wishes supposedly come true if you sacrifice something important. Fat Morty wishes for sandwiches and throws in his panini maker. Glasses Morty wishes incest porn had more mainstream appeal for a friend. Then, Slick, who has a trauma implant that makes everyone sad, says Morty wishes never come true on the Citadel. He wishes things would change, then throws himself into the portal. After he disappears, an announcement plays. Garbage dump, stand back, and trash pours out. The wishing portal is literally garbage disposal. Slick killed himself in a trash chute, but when the surviving Mortys return to school, it's been shut down, and the system is changing. Slick's wish came true, Lizard Morty says. President Morty gets a haircut with the Shadow Council of Ricks, the real power behind the Citadel. Garment District Rick gives him the "We run things, you're just a figurehead" speech. President Morty calmly asks, does he speak for everyone here? 7 Ricks raise their hands. President Morty snaps his fingers, and Officer Ricks execute all 7 immediately. The surviving Ricks are terrified. President Morty pours a drink and says this seems like a good time for a cold, calculated speech with sinister overtones. But speeches are for campaigning, and now is the time for action. The final shot is dozens of bodies floating in space, Cop Morty, Big Morty, Investigator Rick, Campaign Manager Morty, all the Shadow Council Ricks. Documents float past showing photos of a Morty with an eye patch removing it next to a puppet-controlled Rick. Evil Morty from Season 1 just conquered an entire civilization through democracy, then murdered everyone who knew his secret. For the damaged coda plays, while bodies drift in the void. Cut to our Rick and Morty returning from Atlantis, soaking wet and celebrating. They have no idea Evil Morty just became president of a fascist state. The Ricklantis Mixup replaced the advertised adventure with political commentary and made it the best episode of the season. Every storyline ends in death or betrayal. Rick J22 becomes a cookie flavor. Cop Morty gets shot by his partner. Slick kills himself in garbage. Campaign Manager Morty gets ejected into space. 7 oligarch Ricks get executed. Evil Morty won by giving disenfranchised Mortys hope, then immediately betrayed them to seize absolute power. The episode argues that fascism fills the void left by meaninglessness. When infinite versions of you exist, and nothing matters, people embrace anyone who promises order and purpose. The show depicts every broken system: education, enforcing conformity, police serving the powerful, factories extracting human experience for profit, and democracy controlled by oligarchs. Evil Morty didn't fix these systems. He just eliminated anyone who might stop him from controlling them. Even in a society of infinite genius Ricks, they recreate every oppressive structure from regular society, because oppression is useful for people in power. The episode ends with Rick saying the Citadel will never have any bearing over our lives ever again, which is either dramatic irony or willful ignorance that an evil Morty, who hates him now, runs a government with infinite resources. The show delivered character development, world building, and social commentary in 22 minutes by completely abandoning the main characters. And they did all this in an episode supposed to be about Atlantis. Evil Morty murdering his way to fascist presidency looked satisfying until Rick finally killed his wife's murderer and felt absolutely nothing. But if you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe to our channel. Unmortricken is the episode where Rick finally kills the man who murdered his wife and discovers revenge doesn't fix anything. Evil Morty shows up because Rick's obsessive hunt for Rick Prime is causing dimensional shockwaves that reach even outside the finite curve, which is pretty impressive considering Evil Morty specifically left to get away from Rick nonsense. This is Season 7, Episode 5. The episode concludes a revenge plot running since Season 1. Rick C-137 has been hunting Rick Prime, the Rick who killed his wife Diane, for decades, and Evil Morty is annoyed that even after escaping to other realities, Rick's quest still bothers him. Evil Morty explains the finite curve while helping Rick track his target. It's a walled garden of universes where Rick is always the smartest being. Every Rick inside operates in a rigged game they designed, and Evil Morty escaped it in the Ricklantis Mixup. They track Rick Prime to a trap containing dozens of other Ricks who lost their Dianes. Rick Prime reveals he used the Omega device to erase Diane from every universe across infinity, then offers to bring one back to whichever Rick survives a battle royale. The Ricks start killing each other over a lie. Rick and Evil Morty team up, escape, and track Rick Prime to his base. During the fight, Evil Morty tricks Rick Prime by switching shirts with Morty, fries all his backup clones, steals the Omega device schematics, and hands him over to Rick. Rick Prime tries the "we're the same" villain speech before Rick beats him to death and erases him across infinite realities with the Omega device. Evil Morty immediately points out Rick doesn't feel better. How's it feel? Better? No. Exactly the same? Yeah, it always does. The episode ends with "Look on down from the bridge," playing while Rick sits silently in the garage, completely empty. The final scene shows Slow Mobius's family forgetting he existed as the Omega device erases him. Unmortricken argues that revenge doesn't heal trauma, it just gives you something to do instead of processing it. Rick spent decades making this hunt his entire purpose. Now Rick Prime is dead, and Rick still feels broken, angry, and alone with his wife still gone. The revenge didn't bring Diane back or make him whole. It left him in a garage with nothing left to chase. Evil Morty saw this coming because he's been through his own revenge arc. The hollowness of the victory is the point. Revenge promised meaning and delivered emptiness. Rick's hollow revenge victory, after decades hunting his wife's killer, looked depressing until he built a disintegration laser to commit suicide after his ex-girlfriend broke up with him via citywide note. Autoerotic Assimilation is the episode where Rick runs into his ex-girlfriend, who happens to be a hive mind controlling an entire planet, and it ends with him trying to kill himself in the garage. Rick responds to a distress beacon hoping for a ship full of dead aliens and a bunch of free stuff, which is extremely on brand for viewing tragedy as a shopping opportunity. This is Season 2, Episode 3. The distressed aliens explain their planet was taken over by an entity that absorbed everyone's minds. Rick figures out two are already assimilated. They screech and take over the others, then reveal themselves as Unity, Rick's ex. Unity is a hive mind entity that assimilates entire populations, controlling all their bodies simultaneously. Rick introduces Unity to his grandkids, with the awkward energy of bringing your current family to meet your ex, who is literally thousands of people at once. Unity has leveled up since they broke up. When they dated, Unity was a young hive mind with the population of a small town. But now, Unity controls an entire planet, working toward joining the Galactic Federation. Unity admits they phased out recreational substances because there's no need for escape from the self when your world is one. But Rick knows Unity better. He watched Unity assimilate a whole police station just to get your hands on the evidence locker. They immediately start making out using multiple bodies while a crowd forms around them. Rick makes increasingly wild demands: a hang glider, crotchless Uncle Sam costume, a stadium field covered with naked redheads, and stands packed with men who look like his father. The show cuts to Rick flying over a stadium while thousands chant "Go, son, go" in his dad's voice. Rick is literally staging his father's approval on a planetary scale, which is therapy via elaborate sexual fantasy. Beta 7 shows up, another hive mind species maintaining a practical alliance with Unity. When Rick puts his hand on Beta 7's shoulder, every single Beta 7 body screams and points at him in unison. Rick finds drugs in Beta 7's supplies and suggests partying, which Unity agrees to for old time's sake. Beta 7 leaves looking concerned, and Rick correctly identifies that Beta 7 wants more than a practical alliance. This is Rick, recognizing romantic interest while actively being a terrible influence on his ex. Summer tries waking up assimilated people by slapping them. Unity reveals through one man that before assimilation he was a registered sex offender, and another woman was a suicidal drug addict, now working as a marine biologist. Unity starts glitching from partying too hard with Rick, and assimilated people vomit and fall over as Unity loses control. When people regain individuality, they immediately start a race war over nipple shapes. Ron Benson reveals his flat, concentric nipple rings, proving he's the top race, and Daryl Jefferson shows cone nipples, declaring his race superior. Summer tries pointing out they're all the same, but Morty sighs. Ah, Summer, first race war, huh? Unity regains control and saves them. Summer and Morty confront Rick at Unity's burning headquarters, demanding he come home because he's a horrible influence. Summer delivers the line, "You and Unity are like leggings and mid-calf boots. You think you're great together, but you're just bringing out the worst in each other." Rick refuses to leave, calling Summer a hyper-emotional, needy little human and telling both kids to take a hike. Unity leaves Rick a breakup note scattered across the entire town. Every surface is covered in letters. Unity's note explains, "I realize now that I'm attracted to you for the same reason I can't be with you. You can't change, and I have no problem with that. But it clearly means I have a problem with myself." Unity admits, "I lose who I am and become part of you, because in a strange way, you're better at what I do without even trying." This is a hive mind that assimilates billions, admitting one single person is better at absorbing and dominating. The PS says, "I don't know where those coal miners were before they got assimilated. You might want to get checked." Rick comes home and lies to the family, saying Unity thrives on enslavement and fun's fun, but who needs it? Then he goes to the garage. The song, "Do You Feel It?" by Chaos starts playing. Rick drains his flask and throws it away. He builds a metal contraption with two bulbs, pulls out a frozen alien creature, brings it to life with chemicals, and places it under the machine. The device disintegrates the alien with an energy blast. Rick drinks the rest of the chemicals, replaces the bulb, and puts his own head under the machine. There's graffiti on the wall saying, "Do it." At the last second, he falls unconscious and slumps forward, missing the killing blast. The camera zooms out through the open garage door, showing Rick passed out at the desk through the night and into morning, while Jerry cheerfully weeds the garden completely unaware his father-in-law just attempted suicide 10 feet away. Autoerotic Assimilation argues that depression isn't the cool detachment Rick performs, it's this: building a machine to kill yourself after your ex leaves because you know they're right about you being toxic. The episode spent 20 minutes showing Rick partying with a planetary hive mind and dismissing his grandkids' concerns, then ends with him alone in a garage trying to die. The suicide attempt isn't played for laughs or given any funny musical cue. It's just sad and real, with Rick too drunk to even successfully kill himself. The show is saying Rick's nihilism and party lifestyle are symptoms of genuine suicidal depression, not badges of cool intelligence. Unity's breakup note nails why the relationship was toxic. Rick is better at Unity's whole deal, absorbing and dominating without trying, which means Unity loses their identity around him. Beta 7 represented the healthy option, another hive mind that could relate to Unity as equals. But Rick was more exciting, more unpredictable, more fun. The episode asks whether excitement is worth losing yourself, and Unity's answer is no. Rick's answer is building a death laser. The aftermath shows Jerry oblivious to Rick's pain while happily doing yard work, demonstrating how invisible depression can be even to people living in the same house. Rick performs the cool grandpa persona so well that nobody realizes he's actively suicidal. The garage scene recontextualizes everything, all Rick's adventures, his drinking, his casual cruelty, his refusal to connect. It's all armor against this moment, and the armor failed. The episode ends with Rick passed out at his workbench, having failed even at suicide, because that's the reality of depression the show wanted to depict without any comforting resolution. Rick's failed suicide attempt after Unity dumped him looked like rock bottom until his best friend got executed at his wedding by a teenage Federation spy. The Wedding Squanchers is the episode where Rick's best friend gets murdered at his own wedding by his bride, who's secretly a space cop, and Rick ends up in prison to save his family. The episode opens with the family getting an invitation to Bird Person's wedding with Tammy, Summer's high school friend, which Rick dismisses by saying, "Weddings are basically funerals with cake." Then the courier flap accidentally ships Jerry to the wedding planet, forcing everyone to go. This is Season 2, Episode 10, and it's the season finale that left everyone waiting over a year for resolution. The episode establishes early that something's wrong when Rick makes a toast at the wedding about opening himself up to others and loving Tammy because Bird Person loves her. This is Rick being emotionally vulnerable in public, which should have been everyone's first clue that things were about to go sideways. Squanchy even throws away his Rick's Best Friends Forever bracelet in disgust at the sentimentality. Tammy stands up for her speech and thanks Rick, then casually mentions she's a high school senior from planet Earth, marrying a 40-year-old bird person, before revealing the actual truth. In a lot of ways, what I really am is a deep cover agent for the Galactic Federation, and you guys are a group of wanted criminals, and this entire building is in a certain sense surrounded. Beth asks, "I don't get the metaphor," and Jerry says, "I'll explain later," which is peak Jerry energy for completely missing that there is no metaphor. Tammy pulls out a pulse rifle from the wedding decorations and announces everyone's under arrest. Bird Person stands up confused, asking, "Tammy, what are you doing?" Tammy tells him to sit his bird behind down, and when he doesn't comply, she shoots him multiple times in front of everyone. Bird Person falls from his perch, making dying bird noises while Rick screams, "Bird Person, new." This is the show's version of the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, except instead of political intrigue, it's a high schooler who was deep undercover dating a bird alien to catch space criminals. The bloodbath begins immediately, with Squanchy and other guests, who turn out to be wanted criminals, pulling out weapons and fighting Federation agents. Squanchy even injects himself with something that makes him grow huge and start demolishing agents. The Smith family goes on the run, hiding out on a desert planet while the Federation hunts Rick. Jerry immediately suggests turning Rick in to go back to normal life, and the rest of the family rejects this hard. Beth admits the truth everyone's been dancing around, "Because I don't want him to leave again, you dumb jerk." This is Beth finally saying out loud that her entire motivation for tolerating Rick's chaos is abandonment issues from childhood. The family agrees that no matter how much it hurts or destroys their futures, they'll do whatever Rick wants, whenever he wants, which is codependency, as a mission statement. Rick announces he's going to get ice cream from the Gloppy Drop system. Morty immediately knows something's wrong and asks if Rick's leaving. Rick gives this whole explanation about how, if you go where ice cream is and don't come back, you haven't actually gotten ice cream, which is Rick speak for, "I'm definitely not coming back." Morty delivers the line, "Rick, I can handle it if you go, but you'll break Mom's heart, and I won't forgive you for that." This is one of the few times Morty successfully guilt trips Rick into considering someone else's feelings. Rick flies away and calls the Galactic Federation, pretending to be Jerry, giving them his location at the Plim Plom Tavern. He tells them, "I'm doing what's right for the galaxy," and asks if his family can have a normal life when they return to Earth. The agent confirms they only want Rick, and the family will be fine. Rick then says, "I'm Jerry Smith, and I love sucking big sweaty boners and licking disgusting furry testicle sacks," to make sure Jerry gets blamed for something embarrassing in their records, which is Rick being petty even during his sacrifice. Hurt by 9 Inch Nails plays, while Rick sits alone in the tavern, looking at a photo of him with Bird Person and Squanchy. He drops the photo, leaves money on the table, walks outside, and immediately gets arrested by Federation soldiers who were waiting. Meanwhile, the family realizes Rick's not coming back, and Federation ships arrive to take them home. Jerry's thrilled, everyone else is devastated. They return to Earth, which is now under Federation control, with aliens everywhere, and mandatory employment assignment for citizens. A robot gives Jerry antidepressants and a job, and Jerry's genuinely happy about it while carrying Beth in excitement. This is Jerry's paradise, being told what to do and medicated into compliance. Rick gets processed into Federation prison. They take his mugshot, pull his tongue for DNA, and the computer marks him as having committed everything when asked what crimes he's in for. He gets locked in a maximum security floating cube cell, and when another prisoner asks what he's in for, Rick just says, everything. The episode ends with Rick at his absolute lowest point, imprisoned, isolated, having sacrificed himself so his family could go home, and his best friend is dead. The Wedding Squanchers argues that Rick's capable of selflessness when pushed, but it comes at massive cost. He lost Bird Person, his oldest friend, gave up his freedom, and condemned his family to live under authoritarian rule, just so they could be on Earth. The rare, "I'm sorry," he tells Morty, before turning himself in, shows Rick knows this is goodbye. And Morty's threat about not forgiving him for breaking Beth's heart actually worked. Rick chose his family over himself for once, and the reward was a cube cell in space prison, while Jerry thrives under Federation employment. The season ends on this cliffhanger with Rick completely powerless for the first time, which the show wouldn't resolve until season 3. Rick, sacrificing his freedom to save his family after Bird Person's execution, looked heroic, until he saved Bird Person's consciousness and got coldly dismissed for being a selfish friend. Rickternal Friendshine of the spotless Mort is the episode where Rick enters his best friend's traumatized brain to save him from a coma, meets a younger version of himself, and discovers that rescuing someone doesn't automatically repair your relationship. Bird Person was resurrected by the Federation as Phoenix Person, a cyborg weapon, after Tammy murdered him at their wedding, and Rick's trying to bring back his consciousness. This is Season 5, Episode 8. The episode starts with Rick alone in his garage attempting to revive Bird Person, whose mind has retreated deep into itself to escape trauma. Rick's AI garage suggests he could just grab a different timeline's Bird Person who suits him better, but Rick refuses because that's not how this works. He converts himself into a thought and gets injected into Bird Person's mind, which manifests as a music festival called Birding Manapalooza, where young Rick and young Bird Person first met. Inside the mindscape, Rick meets Memory Rick, a younger version of himself that Bird Person remembers from their early friendship. Memory Rick is idealistic, judgmental, and immediately annoying to current Rick because he represents everything Rick used to be before decades of reality ground him down. They have to work together to find Bird Person's fleeing consciousness, and Memory Rick keeps calling out current Rick for being cynical and alone. When current Rick mentions having a hypothetical grandson named Morty, Memory Rick is horrified. "You're one of those creeps who moves in with abandoned adult Beths?" Current Rick fires back, "You live with a version of our dead daughter. It had better be complicated." They track Bird Person to his suppressed Federation memories, the traumatic stuff that got walled off when he became a cyborg. Bird Person reveals he came there to end it all, essentially attempting suicide by diving into his own worst memories until his mind collapses. Rick finds him about to marry Memory Tammy, who's still evil, even as a memory, and has to fight through Bird Person's remembered trauma to save him. The Battle of Blood Ridge appears, their Vietnam, the war against the Federation that defined their friendship. Memory Rick thinks it's awesome, and can't understand why older Rick wouldn't want to relive it. Current Rick shows him the aftermath and explains, all equally real, all equally unreal, none of it matters. Young Rick has a breakdown when he realizes that helping Bird Person at Blood Ridge was the beginning of their friendship, but older Rick represents where that friendship leads, alone, cynical, and saving a friend who remembers him as insufferable. The episode reveals that after Blood Ridge, young Rick offered Bird Person the ability to see infinite universes where they won, lost, or the war never happened. Rick was trying to show Bird Person that nothing matters, but Bird Person rejected it, saying, "The relationship we have is not worth my integrity." Young Rick thought he was being cool, offering cosmic perspective. Bird Person saw it as Rick being unable to commit to anything mattering. Their friendship survived this, but never fully recovered from the fundamental incompatibility. The escape sequence reveals Bird Person has a daughter with Tammy that he didn't know about, because the Federation erased those memories. Rick knew about the kid, but chose not to tell Bird Person immediately, only revealing it when necessary to convince BP to live. Memory Tammy fights them, and Bird Person has to say goodbye to the memory of his wife who murdered him, telling her, "I really did love you," before they escape. They make it out by hopping through shared memories, Gearhead's funeral, Squanchy's terrible stand-up phase, and back to the music festival where they met. Rick expects things to return to normal after saving Bird Person's life, immediately suggesting they go drink together, but Bird Person is cold and distant. He thanks Rick but says he has parenting stuff to deal with and needs to handle memory. Rick, who snuck into his brain to try living as a sentient thought. When Rick tries to deflect, Bird Person calls him out. "Was there really a second where you knew about my child but chose not to inform me on the chance I might then grow too busy child-rearing to hang out?" Rick admits this is fair, and Bird Person says, "I will see you when I see you," before walking away. No hug, no real reconciliation, just cold acknowledgement of what happened. Ricketernal Friendshine argues that trauma permanently changes relationships even when people survive. Rick saved Bird Person's life twice, once at the wedding by letting him escape, once by diving into his mind, but saving someone doesn't mean they owe you forgiveness. Bird Person remembers young Rick as judgmental, and current Rick as someone who withholds important information for selfish reasons. The episode shows Rick literally fighting his own toxic influence. Memory Rick represents the version of himself that Bird Person actually liked, before Rick became the cynical person he is now. Rick wins the battle but loses the friendship's warmth. Bird Person survived, but the relationship is damaged beyond what one rescue mission can fix. Bird Person rejecting Rick after his brain rescue looked cold until Rick turned himself into a pickle and murdered dozens just to skip one therapy session. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like these. Pickle Rick is the episode where Rick turns himself into a pickle to avoid family therapy, ends up killing dozens of people in a foreign agency, then gets diagnosed by Dr. Wong in the most brutal character analysis the show has ever delivered. Rick claims he did this to challenge myself, but there's literally a syringe of anti-pickle serum hanging above him on a timer set for exactly when they'd leave for therapy. This is Season 3, Episode 3, and it won an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. Morty immediately calls out the obvious avoidance scheme, but Beth takes the serum anyway and leaves Rick stranded as a pickle. The family cat, Izzy, knocks him off the workbench, thinking he's a snake. He rolls into direct sunlight and starts shriveling up. Then it rains and he rolls into a sewer. This is Rick at his most pathetic, a genius reduced to a dehydrating vegetable because he'd rather risk death than attend one therapy session. In the sewers, Rick licks pickle juice to attract a cockroach, bites its head off, and licks its brain to control its legs like a puppet. He builds a rat exoskeleton after setting up an elaborate Rube Goldberg trap to decapitate a rat, then massacres an entire mischief of rats using weapons made from office supplies and dead animals. He tells the dying alpha rat, "You aren't special to me." Within minutes, Rick has built a functional battlesuit from garbage. This is the show demonstrating that Rick can MacGyver his way out of literally anything except emotional honesty. Rick flies out of a toilet into a foreign government agency building. The agents speak Russian, implications of authoritarian state. He tries to leave peacefully, but they immediately start shooting. So he spends the rest of the episode killing dozens of armed guards, using staplers and batteries as laser guns. The agency director sends Jaguar, a John Wick meets Big Cat prisoner, to kill Rick. They fight, both patching themselves up using condiments and coffee filters, while monologuing about their daughters. Rick wins but spares Jaguar when he learns the agency lied about his daughter being alive. They team up, blow up the building, and Jaguar flies Rick to therapy in a stolen helicopter. The entire action sequence is presented as easier and more comfortable for Rick than sitting in a therapist's office for an hour. Meanwhile, the family is at Dr. Wong's office for court-mandated therapy. Morty was huffing pottery glaze and wetting desks. Dr. Wong immediately focuses on the pickle situation. Beth gets defensive, accusing the therapist of attacking her and having a racist name. It's not, Doctor. Wong stays calm and delivers her diagnosis. I think this pickle incident is a better path than any other to the heart of your family's dysfunction. I think it's possible that you and your father have a very specific dynamic. I don't think it's one that rewards emotion or vulnerability. I think it may punish them. Beth's response is, "Forget you, then forget both of you too," to her kids, proving Dr. Wong's point immediately. Summer admits she wants to be seen as someone who just likes getting high rather than escaping family problems. Morty admits he's sad he peed in class. These are vulnerable moments, while Rick is literally killing people to avoid the same thing. Rick crashes through Dr. Wong's door as a pickle and flops on the couch. Beth asks, "What's in the syringe?" Rick admits it's anti-pickle serum, then launches into a speech about not respecting therapy because he's a scientist. He says therapy is just a rented office in a strip mall where some agent of averageness explains feelings, and it only helps people get comfortable and stop panicking, which is a state of mind we value in the animals we eat. He declares, "I'm not a cow, I'm a pickle when I feel like it." Dr. Wong responds with the most devastating character analysis in the show's history. You seem to alternate between viewing your own mind as an unstoppable force and as an inescapable curse. And I think it's because the only truly unapproachable concept for you is that it's your mind within your control. You are the master of your universe, and yet you are dripping with rat blood and feces. Your enormous mind literally vegetating by your own hand. She continues, "I have no doubt that you would be bored senseless by therapy, the same way I'm bored when I brush my teeth and wipe my behind. Because the thing about repairing, maintaining, and cleaning is it's not an adventure. There's no way to do it so wrong you might die. It's just work. And the bottom line is, some people are okay going to work, and some people would rather die. Each of us gets to choose." Rick has no response. He just sits there covered in rat blood while Dr. Wong's timer goes off. In the car afterward, Rick apologizes for lying but immediately deflects by bringing up Morty and Summer's problems. Beth laughs and agrees, and they decide to skip future therapy to go get drunk instead. Morty says quietly, "I liked her," but nobody listens. Pickle Rick argues that intelligence can be a prison when used as a defense mechanism against emotional work. Rick can solve any external problem. He built a battlesuit from dead rats and killed his way through a government facility. But he can't fix what's actually broken inside him because that requires vulnerability and sustained effort without the dopamine hit of adventure. Dr. Wong nailed it. Repairing yourself isn't exciting. There's no way to do it so wrong you might die. It's just work. And Rick would literally rather die or kill dozens of people than do that work. The family doesn't go back to therapy, choosing the comfortable pattern of using intelligence to justify their dysfunction. Rick can invent anything except a version of himself that's capable of being emotionally honest, which is the one problem his genius can't solve. Rick murdering dozens to avoid therapy seemed extreme, until he built a device that murdered hundreds of Mortys just to win an argument about a vat. The Vat of Acid episode is where Rick builds Morty, a save point device just to win an argument. Morty uses it to live without consequences. Then Rick reveals every reset murdered an alternate version of Morty to teach him why permanent choices matter. The episode opens with Rick's fake acid vat escape plan going hilariously wrong because the bones float up too slowly, making everyone uncomfortable. This is Season 4, Episode 8. Morty mocks Rick's failed vat idea, they argue, and Morty brings up his video game-style place-saving device that Rick constantly dismisses. Rick says he doesn't do time travel, and the idea isn't worth doing. Morty accuses Rick of being unable to build it. Rick, being Rick, gets so offended that he calls Morty at 3 and pretending he failed and is ashamed, then reveals he actually built the device just to prove Morty wrong. "I did it, you little son of a bitch." This is Rick, spending presumably hours of work on an invention solely to win an argument with a teenager. Morty goes wild with the save point remote. He does his math homework completely naked in front of the class, resets when it goes badly, then delivers a gross punchline that somehow works. He lives recklessly, befriends a heroin dealer, watches suicide by cop scenarios for fun, and gradually builds confidence. The montage shows Morty using the device to optimize every interaction, learning through trial and error with zero stakes. He talks to Jessica multiple times, resetting after each awkward moment until he finds the perfect casual vibe. Jessica notices he seems different, like he finally found himself, and says she likes who he found. Morty feels genuinely good about this growth. Then Morty has his philosophical moment. He tells Rick that living without consequences was fun at first, but he started wondering what he's building if he's always looking back. "We are who we are because of consequences. You can't live without consequences." Rick immediately crushes this. "That's a beautiful thought, Morty, but no. There were definitely consequences. You did everything you did. It all happened." Rick explains the device wasn't time travel or do-overs. It was splitting probable realities and shunting Morty into near-duplicate dimensions at moments of parallel determination. The problem? There was already a Morty in each probable dimension. That's right, you little bitch, you prestiged yourself. Every time Morty reset to smell Jessica's hair or relive a satisfying fart, he incinerated another version of himself. Rick built a device that murdered alternate Mortys so our Morty could optimize his life like a video game speedrun. Morty realizes he's killed dozens or hundreds of himself, Rick offers to merge the probable realities so only one Morty did all those things. But first, Morty has to live with what he did. Various groups show up to arrest him. SWAT teams, drug dealers, Me Too activists, the ACLU, the NAACP, Gamergate, even Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Morty doesn't want to talk about that one. Morty's trapped with no way out, and Rick says, "I guess it is a shitty idea," about the vat, forcing Morty to admit the vat is good, and kiss the vat before jumping in to escape. After they escape, Rick reveals they're not even in their home reality. "You think I'd waste our home teaching you a lesson?" Rick transported them to a different dimension entirely just to set up this whole moral punishment. This reality still has Johnny Carson alive, no 9/11, and Rocky Road ice cream with peanut butter instead of marshmallows. Morty's outraged about the marshmallows being the best part, which is the most Morty priority ever. The Vat of Acid episode argues that consequence-free living isn't actually living. Morty optimized every interaction with Jessica until she liked him, but that version of finding himself was built on infinite do-overs that don't exist in real life. The relationship wasn't real because he never had to commit to a choice and live with it. Rick's reveal that each reset killed an alternate Morty turns save scumming into serial murder, making the philosophical point brutally literal. You can't escape consequences by resetting. You just create new consequences somewhere else. But the episode is also about Rick's staggering pettiness. He built a reality-splitting device that commits mass murder just to prove Morty wrong about the vat being a bad idea. Rick spent hours on invention, dimensional travel, and elaborate staging, purely to win an argument, and teach Morty a lesson about respecting his ideas. The whole adventure was Rick, being so offended by criticism that he traumatized his grandson. Rick's genius isn't the problem. Using that genius to torture a teenager over bruised ego is the problem. The vat was a bad idea, but Rick couldn't just admit it and move on. Instead, he made Morty murder hundreds of himself to prove that permanent choices matter, which is the most Rick solution possible to a petty argument. Rick making Morty accidentally murder hundreds of himself seemed cruel until Morty's girlfriend intentionally murdered 300 coal miners for the environment. A Rick Convenient Mort is the episode where Morty falls in love with a Captain Planet parody who murders 300 coal miners, and Rick is uncharacteristically supportive when Morty has to break up with her. The episode opens with Morty watching Planetina save the day with elemental powers while delivering clunky environmental catchphrases like, "There's only one solution for Earth's pollution, you." This is Season 5, Episode 3. Morty is immediately smitten with Planetina, a sentient amalgam of natural elements, who's manifested by 4 kids, called the Tina Tears, who combine their elemental rings to summon her. Except these kids have been doing this since the mid-90s, so they're now middle-aged adults who treat Planetina like a product they own. Morty and Planetina start dating, sneaking around because she tells her kids she's out recycling batteries while actually meeting Morty. The relationship seems genuinely sweet. She tells a TV reporter that Morty traveled 200 miles just to save a rabbit from the fire and calls him special. Beth kicks Planetina out when Morty announces she's moving in, saying Morty's too young at 14. Morty delivers this speech about how he's never fit in anywhere. Everything he says gets met with eye rolls, and Planetina's the only person who makes him feel like he belongs. He tells Beth, "I will never forgive you for this," and runs away. The Tina Tears are selling Planetina to some Arab overseas, who plans to celebrate with infant seal dinner, because the show wants us to know these people are cartoonishly evil. Eddie threatens to disfigure Morty so Planetina won't love him anymore. Morty grabs the elemental rings and burns all 4 Tina Tears alive, then uses their ashes to summon Planetina and free her. He literally murders 4 people to liberate his girlfriend, which the episode treats as romantic rather than horrifying. Then comes the coal mine massacre. Planetina finds miners gutting land for coal and begs them to stop, saying they're killing the planet. The miners tell her they need the jobs. Planetina snaps and murders all 300 of them using her elemental powers, screaming, "There's only one solution for Earth's pollution," while slaughtering workers. Morty watches in horror as his girlfriend commits eco-terrorism on people whose crime was having working-class jobs in a broken economic system. Morty breaks up with Planetina, telling her he can't see her anymore. She argues back, "Those innocent miners voted men into power to protect their precious jobs, so they can buy more plastic garbage and eat the corpses of tortured animals. The system is broken, Morty. This is the only way I can save Earth." The show presents actual complexity. Yes, the miners are participating in a destructive system, but they're also just people trying to survive. Planetina's not wrong about the system being broken, but mass murder isn't a solution. Morty tells her, "If that's the only way, "I don't want to be saved," and asks her to leave. When she says she loves him, he responds, "I can't love you. I just can't." Planetina refuses. "I'll go, but don't you dare ask me to understand." She leaves, and Morty collapses crying in Beth's arms. The episode doesn't villainize Planetina or make her suddenly evil. She genuinely believes she's saving the planet. She's just willing to kill hundreds of people to do it. Rick is surprisingly kind about the whole thing. When Morty's devastated after the breakup, Rick doesn't mock him or make jokes. The episode ends the next morning with Morty clearly still heartbroken, and there's no magical fix. Rick just lets Morty feel his feelings, showing actual empathy instead of weaponizing Morty's pain. A Rick-convenient Mort argues that growing up means accepting loss and moral complexity instead of forcing happy endings. Morty can't save Planetina by loving her enough. She murdered 300 people and will continue murdering for the planet. Morty has to accept that someone can genuinely love him and still be fundamentally incompatible because their moral frameworks don't align. The episode doesn't say Planetina is entirely wrong about the environmental crisis, or that the miners were entirely innocent. Both things are true simultaneously, and Morty has to live with losing someone he loved because the alternative is accepting mass murder. Planetina murdering 300 coal miners over environmentalism seemed extreme until Rick's unconscious family staged a Marxist revolution over dish-rinsing duties. Night Family is the episode where Rick gives everyone sleep devices that program their unconscious bodies to do tasks at night, and the Night Family immediately stages a workers' revolt, led by Night Summer, demanding everyone rinse their dishes. The episode opens with Rick showing off his abs that Night Rick does crunches to build while he sleeps, calling the somnambulator the best investment I've ever made. This is Season 6, Episode 4. Rick gives the whole family somnambulators despite initially refusing, and everyone programs their night people. Morty learns Spanish, Summer learns trumpet, Rick gets abs. Jerry doesn't program tasks at all. He just writes pen pal letters to Night Jerry about Tori Amos and pajamas, treating his unconscious self like a friend instead of a slave. Night Summer asks if the Day family could rinse dishes after eating, since dried food makes cleaning harder. Rick immediately refuses, saying they exist only to do the stuff we don't want to do. When Jerry suggests it's reasonable, Rick declares request denied. The Night family responds by smashing all the dishes. Rick replaces them with unbreakable alien dishes, and the conflict escalates. Night Summer force feeds Rick diarrhea, then the Night family strips the house of everything, including the somnambulator. Night Summer locks Rick out of his tech and takes control. Rick's solution is sending Summer undercover, wearing a sleep deprivation suit, while drinking DewQuil, Mountain Dew and DayQuil, to stay awake and sabotage the somnambulator. But Night Summer was upgrading it to extend range beyond the house, and when Summer destroys it, Night Summer reveals she has backups. Night Summer enslaves the Day family, forcing them to do manual labor while declaring it is natural for the day to serve the night. Night was here long before day. Half of all time is nighttime. This is the show's version of a Marxist revolution, except instead of workers versus capitalists, it's unconscious selves versus conscious selves. Night Summer makes Rick do crunches, forces Morty to exercise, and generally treats the Day family exactly how they treated the Night family. The power dynamic completely flips. The family tries escaping in Rick's car to get beyond the somnambulator's range before they fall asleep. Night Jerry helps them escape, explaining anything to help Day Jerry's family. He's a very special person. This is the key characterization difference. Night Jerry isn't angry or competent in a threatening way. He's deeply loyal to Day Jerry because Day Jerry was the only one who treated his night person like an actual person instead of a tool. Their pen pal letters were genuine connection, not exploitation. The escape attempt fails when they all fall asleep, and Night Summer catches them. She offers a truce. The Day family agrees to rinse dishes. The Night family stops the revolution. Rick refuses out of pure stubbornness, choosing to let the conflict continue rather than take 2 seconds to rinse plates. They eventually wake up after the Night family spent all their money on vacations and concerts, leaving the Day family broke with a repossessed car and frozen bank accounts. The Night family discovers that seizing the day involves way more work than they thought: paying bills, making phone calls, dealing with bureaucracy. Night family argues that our unconscious selves reveal what we actually want when freed from social performance and ego. Night Summer wants respect and fair treatment for labor. Night Jerry wants genuine connection, which Day Jerry actually gave him through pen pal letters. Night Rick is presumably just as much of an asshole as Day Rick, since he helps Night Summer enslave everyone. The episode asks whether the real you is the conscious self making decisions, or the unconscious self acting without filters. Night Summer calls the day family daemonids and claims they're slaves to the night, which is technically true. They only exist because the night family keeps them alive by sleeping. The show presents the conflict as neither side being entirely right. Yes, the night family deserved basic respect, like having dishes rinsed. But also, they're unconscious, automated versions programmed to do tasks, not actually separate people with independent rights. Or are they? Night Summer certainly develops personality and leadership quickly. Night Jerry forms genuine emotional bonds. The episode never resolves whether the night people are real enough to deserve autonomy or if they're just programmed puppets the day family should control. The ending shows both sides failed. The night family can't handle the complexity of waking life. They spent all the money and now everything's repossessed. The day family can't function without the night family doing invisible labor. Neither side can exist alone, but they also can't coexist peacefully, because one side will always have power over the other. The only person who got it right was Jerry, who treated his night person as a pen pal instead of a servant, creating the only healthy relationship between conscious and unconscious selves in the entire episode. Night Summer enslaving the day family over dish duties seemed dysfunctional, until Rick explicitly called his relationship with Morty abusive and replaced him with 2 crows. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel. Forgetting Sarek Mortchel is the episode where Rick literally replaces Morty with 2 crows after an argument. Morty teams up with another one of Rick's victims, who immediately betrays him, and Rick admits their relationship was abusive before leaving with the crows, claiming he's changed. The episode opens with Morty cleaning up messes Rick left behind, planetary governments collapsing, monsters emerging, because Rick doesn't do transition plans. This is Forgetting Sarek Mortchel from Season 5, Episode 9. Morty accidentally spills portal fluid and tries to cover it up by adding Mountain Dew. Rick discovers this, and they fight. Morty calls Rick's bluff about being replaceable. "Replace me, Rick. Just do it. Good luck finding someone that can be told 80,000 times how replaceable they are." Rick pulls out his Wheel of Better Things Than Morty, which Morty correctly identifies as macaroni art, spins it, and lands on 2 crows. Rick fires Morty on the spot. The wheel also includes options like Gene with donkey brains, half a Paul Giamatti, and sentient garbage, which really hammers home how little Rick values Morty. A guy stuck in Morty's hand with portal fluid on him tells Morty to break the cycle and change the things you can change. Morty tracks him down to a mental asylum. Nick explains. Rick brought him to the Smith house. One night after the bar closed, Nick messed around in the garage, spilled portal stuff, and Rick launched him to Australia with this weirdly primitive catapult in an airtight carbon chamber. That's also how they lost their cable guy, apparently. Nick's been institutionalized ever since. Guards beat him on Sundays and lick his face while he's tied down on Mondays. Plus, it's Meatloaf Day on Mondays, which Nick considers worse than the face licking. Morty breaks Nick out, believing they're both victims of Rick's abuse, who can help each other heal. They become the Portal Boys and trash Rick's garage together, destroying his inventions, including a can crusher Rick spent 3 weeks perfecting. Jerry helps them, getting turned into a puddle in the process. They steal an old portal gun, Nick calls it the equivalent of an iPhone 3, and go on their first adventure to get portal fluid from aliens Rick's been exploiting. The aliens immediately try to kill them for the portal fluid they don't have, and Nick starts shooting people. Morty realizes Nick's not a good guy. Nick reveals the truth. Maybe we both just drink at the same bar, and maybe one night I tried to take his portal gun. Nick was never a victim. He tried robbing Rick and faced consequences. Now he's using Morty as his ticket to becoming a portal boy with access to infinite dimensions. When Morty refuses to partner with him, Nick tries to kill him. "I can't have you connected to me if you're not on my side." This is Morty's rebound relationship being exactly as toxic as his relationship with Rick, just in different ways. Morty escaped one manipulative partner and immediately found another. Meanwhile, Rick trains the 2 crows. They don't follow orders, and Rick gets frustrated until crow cultists teach him crow philosophy. Be your crows. Train yourself. Crows are then trained. Rick has a revelation about empathy and partnership. When the crows get kidnapped, Rick goes to save them. They could kill him but choose to forgive him instead, which shocks Rick. "You could have killed me back there. How did you guys ever forgive me?" One crow responds, "Right, because this toxic thing I have with Morty doesn't define us." The crows explicitly call out Rick's relationship with Morty as toxic. Rick saves Morty from Nick, fixes his injuries, and Morty assumes everything's back to normal. So, we're like, back, right? Rick and Morty, together again. Full reset? Rick responds, No, Morty, I think we're done. Morty thinks it's about the spilled portal fluid, but Rick explains, because you were too afraid to tell me. What we had was abusive. Don't you see? I'm a bad partner because I never made you a true partner. The crows made me see that. I thought they were a joke like you, but it turns out they're more enlightened than any of us. Rick leaves with the crows, giving Morty his portal gun and saying, I'll always be your grandpa, Morty. Just kinda obsessed with crows now. Sad music plays while Rick walks away. Then Rick immediately starts pitching his new show. Oh stuff. Rick and Two Crows. Kicking off my new franchise. The galaxy is our telephone wire. We'll do 1,000 seasons, 14 episodes each, 9 seconds a pop because that's the future of viewing. Shows on your shoes. Rick's instantly moved on to monetizing his new partnership, suggesting the change maybe wasn't that deep. Forgetting Sarek Mortshall argues that recognizing abuse doesn't automatically fix you. Rick correctly identifies their relationship as toxic and admits he never made you a true partner. This is genuine growth, Rick acknowledging fault and setting a boundary. But he immediately replaces Morty with crows and starts planning their multimedia empire, suggesting he learned the language of healthy relationships without actually changing his fundamental patterns. He's still collecting sidekicks, still treating partners as content for adventures, still moving on the second something stops serving him. Morty's arc mirrors this. He correctly identifies Rick as abusive, tries to break free, and immediately partners with Nick, who's also manipulative and violent. Morty can't escape toxic relationships because he doesn't know what healthy ones look like. The episode ends with Morty alone holding a portal gun, technically free but completely unmoored. Rick gave him independence as a breakup gift, which is either genuine kindness or the ultimate power move. Rick gets to leave first, position himself as the mature one, and leave Morty scrambling. The subplot about Garbage Goober reveals he's actually a doctor named Harold, too afraid to admit he's doing the wrong job. His wife tells him, "You're a coward," for letting it go on so long. Harold agrees. This ends here and now, but then immediately goes back to eating garbage when Rick calls. The episode ends with Harold still pretending. Everyone in this episode recognizes their dysfunction, but only Rick actually leaves, and even his leaving might be performative. The show's asking whether awareness of toxicity matters if nobody actually changes their behavior. Rick calling Morty abusive and replacing him with Two Crows looked like abandonment, until Jerry beat someone with a plastic flamingo so badly the guy went home and killed himself. Analyze Piss is the episode where Jerry beats up a urine-based supervillain on their front lawn. The guy kills himself from the humiliation, and Rick spends the rest of the episode disguised as the dead man doing heroic deeds to redeem his legacy. The episode opens with Rick fighting Cookie Magneto, a guy who controls cookies, and immediately shooting him because Rick's exhausted from fighting joke villains seeking attention. This is Analyze Piss from Season 6, Episode 8. Rick's being targeted by an endless parade of gimmick villains like Mr. Calypso, who show up specifically to call Rick names and pick fights. Rick goes to Dr. Wong for therapy, turning Mr. Goldenfold into a fly first to clear the waiting room, because Rick doesn't do appointments. Wong asks Rick to define the situation, and Rick explains he's a walking target for angry nerds who think fighting him gives them a platform. Rick's already captured Mr. Calypso and is milking him for cosmic fluid in Dr. Wong's office, which she points out hasn't solved anything. Dr. Wong suggests ignoring them for a week to see what happens. Rick agrees to prove her wrong. That night, during family dinner, Pissmaster shows up outside screaming and spraying their lawn with urine. His actual name is Eugene Michael Piss, which the show commits to completely. Jerry's upset because Pissmaster's destroying his lavender bush that his bees need. Rick refuses to engage, reminding the family they were just celebrating his growth 5 seconds ago. Then Pissmaster makes it weird by sexually harassing Summer with golden shower comments. Summer's horrified, Beth's offended, and Jerry snaps. Rick tries stopping him by pointing out he'll look bad either way, but Jerry doesn't care because his daughter just got spoken to in explicit terms. The fight is pure Jerry energy. Pissmaster sprays him with piss. Jerry punches him into the street. Pissmaster tries hiding under a car, but can't fit because of his piss tank. Jerry drags him out and beats him with a plastic flamingo, while Pissmaster screams for mercy. Summer films the whole thing. Jerry makes Pissmaster apologize to Summer for sexualizing her, and Pissmaster flies away sobbing. The neighbors applaud. Jerry becomes an instant viral sensation as #FlamingoDad. BuzzFeed makes odd-numbered lists about him. He gets hand clap emojis on white Twitter's impression of black Twitter, and Jezebel offers cash rewards for evidence he's a bad person, which the show calls their highest honor. 2 alien orbs land on their lawn, Blagnar the Eternal and his council seek the Earthling who beat up Pissmaster to offer him a silver orb and a place among their galactic justice organization. Jerry receives the orb, which is sticky, meaning it found a pure heart to bond with. Rick tries warning him about catches, but the aliens reveal their orbs are unsticky for Rick because of his reputation. Rick laments getting banned from the Nextdoor app, and now this. Jerry accepts, asking how the orb works. Blagnar tells him the orb is raw power, and to trust his heart. Jerry can't figure out how to use the orb. He accidentally turns on the microwave while trying to fly. The family looks at Rick, and Jerry caves, asking the orb guy in the family for help. Rick refuses, saying giving Jerry raw power will make him miserable, like Rick. Summer calls him out for doing nothing when Pissmaster tried to pee on her chest, and now he's holding their dad back from being a hero. Rick gives in and builds Jerry a suit that hardwires the orb's infinite energy, including a shooty thing that's actually a nuclear disruptor capable of blowing up planets. Jerry's first mission is a planet of space Hitlers, each one their own type of Hitler, convening on Zeplar Prime. The show commits to this premise with zero apologies. Jerry flies to their meeting, crashes through the ceiling, yelling farewells in German, and immediately gets overwhelmed. He fires wildly, a laser shoots from his arm, and he accidentally vaporizes the entire planet. Jerry nervously hopes there weren't other people there. The news confirms there were only Hitlers on the planet, each ready to start their own Holocaust, meaning Jerry saved an estimated billion lives with one accidental shot. Jerry becomes a galactic hero overnight. Rick returns to Dr. Wong's office, furious with the results. He turns Mr. Goldenfold into a fly again to get privacy. Goldenfold declares himself officially cured after experiencing life as a fly unburdened and free of shame. Rick shows Dr. Wong the data. He ignored a troll. Jerry beat him up. Now Jerry has an orb, and he's using Rick's power to annihilate planets of Hitlers while everyone celebrates. Dr. Wong points out everything he's describing as positive. Hitlers are dead, and Rick's learning to be careful with his power. Rick has a revelation that not reacting really is the kill move. Dr. Wong confirms, and Rick leaves energized. Meanwhile, Jerry's living his best life. He gets offered the first human Mitsubishi Space Lancer and invites Beth, Summer, and Morty to be his bridge crew. They're all thrilled. Rick watches them fly away while Mr. Stringbean, a rhyming villain, shows up to fight. Dr. Buckles, a belt-themed villain, immediately shows up to fight Mr. Stringbean instead. They fight each other while Rick just leaves, amazed that ignoring trolls actually works. Rick goes to a bar where aliens are watching the viral video of Jerry beating up Pissmaster. They're calling Pissmaster the biggest piece of garbage in the galaxy and mocking him for trying to crawl under the car. The bartender asks who could relate to being that much of a piece of garbage. Rick overhears this, leaves immediately, flies to Pissmaster's apartment, and breaks in. Pissmaster is dead in the bathtub. Rick tries reviving him with future medicine, but it's too late. The doorbell rings. Pissmaster's daughter is outside, begging her dad to open up. She mentions saying terrible things about him on her podcast and feeling guilty, worried he might do something to himself, and she'd never stop blaming herself. Rick makes a split-second decision. He puts on Pissmaster's helmet, opens the door slightly, and pretends to be him, saying he's okay. She's relieved. Rick, as Pissmaster, tells her that if anything happens to him, it's 100% not on her, and it's his own choice. She makes him promise not to do something bad, and he agrees. After she leaves, Rick finds Pissmaster's suicide note blaming Jerry Smith, Flamingo Dad, for making him realize people just want to see him fail. Rick creates a full Pissmaster disguise and starts doing heroic deeds. He saves a woman from a purse snatcher with heat-seeking missiles, not just missiles. He saves a cat from a tree. He sprays an ice rink with piss. He stops an active volcano with urine. The show plays a parody of "Y'all Ready for This?" called "Y'all Ready for Piss?" during the montage. News crews ask if he's doing this to make people forget he sucks, and Rick responds he's just saving people to save them. Dr. Wong calls during a rescue, asking why Rick missed his session. Rick explains his plan: put on the suit of his enemy, make a giant bomb, plant it in a city, then have the suit autopilot the bomb into space, so everyone thinks Pissmaster sacrificed himself. Dr. Wong's actually impressed, saying if it's free and fun to do it because it sounds healthy. The Alien Orb Council discusses Pissmaster's honorable rise and votes to offer him an orb ship. Jerry votes no because he's Pissmaster, but everyone else votes yes. They tell Jerry this is a test. If he can't let go of his pettiness enough to recruit Pissmaster, maybe he doesn't deserve his orb. They order him not to come back without Pissmaster. Rick plants a massive bomb on Orphan Island, a city populated entirely by orphans, because the show has zero chill. An 8-year-old tries defusing it, screaming he's 8 years old and has no idea what he's doing. Rick, as Pissmaster, arrives, evacuates everyone with a piss slide, and prepares his heroic sacrifice. Jerry shows up trying to recruit Pissmaster to the Orb Council. Rick tells him to leave because he's busy. Jerry insists this is the greatest honor, and Rick refuses the orb. Jerry keeps pushing, and Rick flies towards space with the bomb. Jerry starts shooting at him, demanding he come back. The kids watching realize Flamingo Dad wants them to blow up. Jerry punches Rick's helmet during the fight, revealing it's Rick disguised as Pissmaster. Rick commands the piss suit to autopilot the payload. The suit flies away, making a flushing noise, and it explodes in space. Both Rick and Jerry crash to the ground. Pissmaster's daughter watches the explosion on TV crying, "That's her dad." The Smith family and Blagnar arrive. Jerry's confused about Rick being Pissmaster. Blagnar declares this completely unstickworthy and revokes Jerry's orb. Jerry's devastated, pointing out he made them all famous. Blagnar responds, he's 1,000 years old and has seen plenty of Flamingo Dads before. Jerry asks why Rick would do this. Rick stumbles through explanations before settling on claiming he's always been Pissmaster. Summer, Morty, and Beth interpret this as Rick letting Jerry beat him up to boost Jerry's confidence. They're impressed by this supposed growth. Jerry's suspicious, but everyone accepts the lie. They go home with Beth saying she's proud of Dad, or should she say Pissmaster. Morty congratulates Rick on the therapy working, and doing all this to make his dad feel good. Then Rick drops the bomb. He tells Morty that Jerry made Pissmaster kill himself, and shows him the suicide note explicitly blaming Jerry. Morty's horrified that Rick kept the suicide note and calls it messed up. Rick defends himself, saying he had to tell someone, and couldn't just sit on that information. Morty immediately runs inside and tells everyone. Jerry screams. The family's furious. Beth yells at Rick for not telling them, especially if Jerry murdered someone. Jerry protests he didn't murder anyone, but everyone turns on him. Summer declares, a man is dead. Jerry has a breakdown asking if this is what it's like to trend, calling it a nightmare and saying he should have just let Pissmaster pee on his daughter. Summer's disgusted, asking what the hell is wrong with him. Analyze Piss argues that internet fame is a death sentence in multiple ways. Pissmaster killed himself because viral humiliation made him realize people just want to see him fail. Jerry briefly experienced purpose and validation through that same viral fame, then lost everything when the truth came out. The episode explores whether you can redeem someone's legacy after they're dead, and Rick's answer is yes, but only by literally becoming them. Rick showed genuine empathy for once, tracking down Pissmaster's daughter to ease her guilt and spending days doing heroic deeds in a dead man's suit. But he still kept the suicide note as leverage and immediately used it to deflect blame when convenient. The show's asking whether Rick actually changed or just learned new manipulation tactics. Dr. Wong was right that ignoring trolls works, but the collateral damage was someone's death. Jerry caused a suicide without meaning to, which is somehow more disturbing than if he'd done it on purpose. The episode ends with Jerry being blamed for murder, while Rick gets praised for supposedly being Pissmaster all along to boost Jerry's confidence. Everyone bought the lie because it fits their narrative better than the truth. Rick tried saving a troll who killed himself over a viral video, and Jerry's 15 minutes of fame cost someone their life. The existential question is whether anyone's actually responsible when the internet collectively decides someone's a joke, or if viral humiliation is just modern mob violence with better memes. Jerry accidentally causing a suicide through viral fame seemed bad until Rick weaponized his wife and daughter's actual murder by pretending it was fake. The Shank Rickdemption is the episode where Rick escapes from space prison by showing the Galactic Federation a fake origin story about his dead wife and daughter, except later seasons reveal the story was actually real, and Rick just pretended it was fake to manipulate everyone. The episode opens with Rick at Shoney's with his family, which immediately feels wrong, because Rick just got arrested last season, and also Rick hating Shoney's that much seems suspicious. This is the Shank Rickdemption from Season 3, Episode 1. Rick's actually trapped in a brainalyzer, being interrogated by Cornelius Daniel, a Federation agent trying to extract the formula for Rick's portal gun from his memories. The Shoney's is Rick's safe space inside his own mind, where he's hiding from the interrogation. Rick keeps farting to annoy Cornelius, manifesting a butt in his own brain just to be petty. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Smith family is living under Federation rule. Where Jerry's thriving, he got 6 promotions this week, and still doesn't know what he does. Everyone gets paid in pills, and horses now live longer than tortoises because of alien medicine. Summer's trying to find Rick's secret lab to rescue him, while Morty tries talking her down. Summer thinks Rick has laser guns and jetpacks and space tanks hidden somewhere. Morty delivers a brutal speech about how Rick bails on everybody, bailed on Beth when she was a kid, bailed on Tiny Planet, and bailed on Summer by leaving her to rot in a world he ruined because nobody's special to him. Summer responds by grabbing a shovel and digging up their backyard, finding the graves where Rick and Morty buried themselves, back in Rick Potion number 9. Morty's horrified, but Summer's energized, deciding to make up a rescue plan as she goes, because that's what heroes do. Back in Rick's brain, Cornelius Daniel pressures Rick to leave the Shoney's safe space and visit actual memories. He threatens that Rick's having a psychotic break and will die along with all his memories if he stays. Rick finally agrees to show him the day he invented the portal gun, admitting it's also the day he lost someone special. The memory starts at a McDonald's drive-thru, where Rick orders a 10-piece McNugget and asks for as much Szechuan sauce as they're allowed to give him. Rick explains that in 1998, McDonald's created this sauce for the Disney film Mulan, and it was delicious. Then they got rid of it, and now the only place to try it is in his memory. The memory shows young Rick in his garage with blue pants, not his standard outfit yet, when another Rick portals in. This Rick, later revealed to be Rick Prime, offers young Rick the secret to interdimensional travel, calling it the chance to become the smartest thing in every conceivable universe, the Infinite Rick, a god. He describes it as a non-stop party where all the guests are the only person they like. Young Rick refuses, saying he's a different kind of Rick. Rick Prime says they'll see how long that lasts and leaves. Young Rick tells his wife Diane that he's done with the science thing and suggests they take Beth out for ice cream instead. Then a portal opens and a bomb falls through. The explosion kills Diane and young Beth. Young Rick does the math, figures out interdimensional travel, and opens a portal. Cornelius Daniel is thrilled because they just got the portal gun formula. He uploads it to Mission Control and prepares to leave Rick's brain to liquefy. Except Rick reveals the code wasn't the portal gun formula at all. It was a virus giving Rick full control over the brainalyzer. Rick explains you can't alter details of a real memory, but you can alter anything you want about a totally fabricated origin story. The Shoney's background stays intact while Cornelius realizes it's a trap. Rick transfers his consciousness into Cornelius Daniel's body, walks out casually, and starts asking about Level 9 access codes. SEAL Team Rick's portal is sent by the Council of Ricks to assassinate C-137 before the Federation gets information, and Rick transfers into one of their bodies. He makes his way to the Council of Ricks, who are holding Morty and Summer prisoner, body hopping through multiple Ricks, including the Commander-in-Chief. Rick teleports the entire Citadel into Federation prison space, dooming it. He reveals himself to the Council, shoots the leader, and rescues his grandkids with the oldest Rick trick in the book, fake gun, that Morty shoots him with during a standoff. Rick accesses Level 9 systems and changes a 1 to a 0, destroying the galactic government by crashing their currency. The Blemflark goes from being worth 1 of itself to 0 of itself. The Federation president asks what they should pay the militia with. Someone asks who's paying them to yell, and the whole government collapses instantly. The president shoots himself. People start fighting over pants and jackets. Earth is suddenly free from Federation rule, and Jerry's cushy government job evaporates. Beth finds Jerry hiding and asks if they'll ever stop paying for indulging her father. Jerry issues an ultimatum, Emeta, him or Rick. Rick comes home, and Beth chooses Rick, asking Jerry to spend some time divorced. Rick pretends to be sympathetic, while clearly having orchestrated this. Summer's thrilled that Rick turned himself in, on purpose, as part of his plan. Then Rick corners Morty in the garage for the darkest monologue in the series. He tells Morty there's no more dad because Jerry threatened to turn him in to the government, so Rick made him and the government go away. Rick's replaced them both as the de facto patriarch of the family and universe. He admits the real reason he rescued Morty and Summer was because Beth wouldn't have accepted him back without them. Rick then reveals his true motivation with the Szechuan sauce rant. He just wants that Mulan McNugget sauce. That's his series arc, his one-armed man. If it takes 9 seasons, he wants that Szechuan sauce. 97 more years, Morty. The episode ends with Rick declaring this is the darkest year of their adventures, while Morty realizes his grandfather just destroyed a government and broke up his parents' marriage as part of a prison escape plan. The Shank Rickdemption argues that Rick's nihilism might be performative armor protecting genuine pain. The show presents the Diane backstory as a fake origin story Rick invented to manipulate the Federation, suggesting Rick's just a sociopath with no real trauma. But later seasons, particularly Solarix and Unmortricken, confirm that Rick Prime actually did kill C-137's Diane and Beth meaning Rick showed them his real trauma and just pretended it was fake. Rick weaponized his worst memory, let the Federation think they were getting his secrets, then used their arrogance against them. The episode questions whether Rick really doesn't care about his family, or if claiming not to care is easier than admitting he lost one family and is terrified of losing another. The Szechuan sauce bit became infamous for creating a real-world McDonald's promotion disaster. But in context, it's Rick, deflecting from admitting anything real. He just told Morty about overthrowing governments and breaking up families, and rather than let that sit, he pivots to screaming about a discontinued condiment for 97 more years. The joke is that Rick would rather sound completely insane talking about dipping sauce than admit he turned himself in to protect his family and then destroyed 2 governments to get them back. Rick's not driven by Szechuan sauce, Tichuan. He's driven by the same revenge quest against Rick Prime that won't be resolved until Season 7. But admitting that would mean admitting he cares about something, and Rick's entire personality is built on the lie that nothing matters to him. Rick, weaponizing his wife's murder by calling it fake, looked bad until the portal reset revealed his current family isn't even from the same dimensions as each other. Just a reminder to subscribe to our channel. Now, let's move on to our next episode. Solarix is the episode where Rick accidentally resets portal travel and sends everyone back to their original dimensions, revealing that our Rick isn't Morty's original grandfather, our Morty isn't Rick's original grandson, and even Jerry's from a completely different timeline. The episode opens with Rick and Morty stranded in space after escaping the destroyed Citadel, drinking piss, and waiting to die until Space Beth rescues them. This is Solarix from Season 6, Episode 1. Rick tries fixing his broken portal gun by doing a hard reset on the portal fluid, but instead of resetting portal travel, he resets portal travelers. Everyone who's ever used interdimensional travel starts pulsing green and gets sent back to their dimension of origin. Rick, Morty, and Jerry are all about to vanish. Summer gets tasked with setting up a beacon so Rick can find his way back. Jerry realizes he's not from this dimension because of the Jerry Buri, which is a deep-cut callback that Rick mocks him for. Rick materializes in his original garage in Dimension Cone 37. The blast marks from Rick Prime's bomb are still visible. A female voice calls from the other room. It's Diane, except she's not real. She's an AI Rick built to haunt himself, passive-aggressively reminding him he always does everything except keep his family alive. Rick opens a hidden safe and pulls out liquor. He finds his elderly neighbor still alive, holding a note about being trapped in a time loop. Rick looks around and sees other elderly people still doing their routines from decades ago. A newspaper boy who's now ancient, a hippie dragging a dog skeleton. Rick admits he used to drink heavily and pulls a lever that powers down the time loop. Mr. Goldmanbach Majorian gasps, "Sweet death," and dies immediately. Morty materializes in the Prime Dimension, the Cronenberg world, from Rick Potion, number 9. The house is overgrown and abandoned. A Cronenberg attacks him. Morty tracks footprints to a grocery store, where he accidentally spears a bearded survivalist, Jerry Prime. Jerry explains, Beth got sick, and Summer didn't thaw right after they spent time frozen. With no one left to blame, Jerry finally dealt with himself through self-help books. Morty suggests they play Downbeat, the family game they never finished. He finds it and brings it back, only to discover Jerry left him a note saying he grabbed all Morty's stuff and split. Jerry Prime later tells Morty that he came back last time and talked about them like they weren't people, then bailed and left them to freeze. Beth and Summer died, and Jerry moved on from caring. His life is perfect except for this conversation. Rick was always right that everyone needs to let go. He leaves Morty sobbing alone. Rick's building a new space cruiser in his C-137 garage. Diane's AI keeps talking, asking if she should be jealous of Summer. Rick snaps that she doesn't get to say she forgives him because she's a thing he built to torture himself. This whole timeline is cursed, and he has to leave. Rick explains he came back by accident. The guy he's looking for isn't findable. He lives with a version of Beth now and they have grandkids. Summer reminds him of Diane. Rick flies his cruiser into the rift without coordinates, embracing the win-win of risking his life. Rick tracks Morty and crash lands in the Prime Dimension. He pulls a hair from Morty's head to scan for Rick Prime. Morty's confused. His original Rick killed Rick's family, and Rick was just waiting for him to come back. They fly to Rick Prime's hideout, but it's a trap with pre-recorded messages and killbots. Morty realizes if Rick doesn't care if he dies, why does he care if Morty dies? Rick says Morty gets it from Rick Prime, not him. Morty responds, he doesn't know Rick Prime, Rick's his grandpa. Rick and Morty, 100 years. Rick saves Summer and the Beths from Citadel monsters, and they retrieve Jerry from another dimension where he's living with a different Smith family. This Jerry's from Season 2. When they rescue him, Jerry tells his fake family they can kiss his sci-fi posterior because he's an interdimensional traveler now. He bumps into the door trying to exit. Season 2, Jerry later releases Mr. Frundles, which starts converting everything it touches into more Mr. Frundles. The infection spreads across Earth within seconds. The family escapes and watches Earth become Mr. Frundles from space. They arrive in a replacement timeline where an alternate Smith family died of apparent natural causes. They bury the bodies in the backyard. Rick admits this was a rush job, so the replacement family says, Parmesan, weird, Parmesan, instead of Parmesan. Rick snaps that he could have left them, and the concept of family doesn't matter, and to him, because he's not even their Rick. Morty asks Rick to promise he's not bait to make Rick Prime come back. Rick says for Morty to be bait, Rick Prime would have to value something, and he truly doesn't care about anything. Rick Prime's the real deal. Solarix reveals that the found family concept the show built is even more fractured than anyone knew. Rick C. 137 isn't Morty's original grandfather. He's a Rick who showed up at Beth's house decades after abandoning her. Our Morty isn't Rick's original grandson because Rick's original Morty died with Diane and Beth. Jerry's not even from the same dimension as Beth. He's a Jerry Bory Jerry. Nobody in this family actually belongs together by conventional definition. They're all refugees from broken timelines who cobbled together a functional family through shared trauma. The episode forces Rick to confront his original dimension and the AI he built to torture himself with Diane's memory. Morty confronts that his original family is dead, and his original Jerry became a survivalist who stopped caring. The show's arguing that found family might be more real than biological family because it's chosen rather than assigned, but also that nobody can escape their origins no matter how many dimensions away they run. They're all far from home, and home doesn't exist anymore anyway. Rick's cobbled-together family from random dimensions seemed dysfunctional until Morty discovered his loving grandpa was actually a robot because real Rick's too obsessed with revenge to care about Christmas. Rictional Mortpoon's Unmortricken is the episode where Rick gives Morty a lightsaber for Christmas. Morty drops it and nearly destroys Earth twice, then discovers Rick's been a robot the whole time because real Rick's too obsessed with hunting Rick Prime to function as a grandfather. The episode opens with Rick playing Santa and giving everyone perfect multiverse gifts while being suspiciously cheerful and attentive. This is Rictional Mortpoon's Unmortricken from Season 6, Episode 10. Rick gives Jerry a longer cut of Miracle on 34th Street, gives both Beth's framed photos from universes where Beth wasn't murdered as a child, gives Summer Venmo money, and gives Morty the thing he's wanted for years, a real lightsaber that makes the noises. Rick's being an amazing grandpa, warning Morty to only use it in designated Jedi zones like the garage. They slice fruit together and Rick even pretends to get struck down like Obi-Wan, disappearing into his clothes. Morty's grateful, telling Rick he's been so great the last couple months and the family's really happy. Then Morty drops the lightsaber perfectly vertical. It falls through the floor, through the basement levels Rick has under the house, including a cool sushi spot on level 15 that Morty didn't know existed, and keeps going toward Earth's core. When they reach the sub-basement, Morty discovers another Rick down there who calls the first Rick a robot. Rickbot admits he's been lying to Morty, but it would have literally killed him not to. He replaced real Rick toward the beginning of the Knights of the Sun thing, because Rick's no good to anybody, until he resolves his arch-nemesis situation. Real Rick's hunting, the guy who killed his wife, and he's removed himself from the family because he's become the thing he hates. Rickbot gave Morty the lightsaber for Christmas. Real Rick's furious about this, and also that the lightsaber's probably run out of sub-basement by now. Morty can't believe Rick tricked them into loving a robot version of him. Rickbot explains he didn't do it because he likes it. He did it because that's his job, tricking the family into loving him. Real Rick tells Rickbot to get upstairs and keep doing that job because it's Christmas. The contrast is brutal. Rickbot was designed to be 22% more thoughtful than real Rick, and the family genuinely loves him more. The president shows up because the lightsaber's heading for Earth's core with kyber crystals in the hilt that'll cause a chain reaction destroying the planet. The president also unloads on Morty about Star Wars, explaining Lucas promised a new trilogy for decades, then fans turned on him when he delivered, and studios churned out irredeemable cash grabs where half the fans pretend to be satisfied and half hate it, and nobody's happy because when you start with a turd, you end with a turd. Morty's crying, saying Rick's busy, and he hates him, and he lost his lightsaber, and it's the worst Christmas ever. The president apologizes for talking to Morty like a UN official, and offers to help get the embarrassing lightsaber back. They build a drill ship to retrieve it. Real Rick offers to just destroy the thing, but the president refuses, wanting to retrieve it properly. Rick mocks the approach and gets told to step aside if he's not helping. They successfully drill down and retrieve the lightsaber. The president and Morty celebrate together. Then, the president reveals he's actually a massive Star Wars fan who saw it in theaters as a kid. The franchise raised him, trained him, taught him good from evil, made having a bad father empowering. When the third movie got muppety, something in him began to rot. He claims he owns Star Wars through the price he paid with his soul. Not Morty, not Lucas, not Disney. He steals the lightsaber and takes the White House into space, revealing the White House has a secret Star Wars section that Carter built and various presidents modified. Morty and the president fight with lightsabers in space. Rickbot shows up to save Morty and gets cut in half by the president's lightsaber Gatling gun. Rickbot's dying but admits he's actively trying to die anyway, so Morty shouldn't be too touched by the sacrifice. Real Rick shows up to save them. Rickbot tells Morty that anything he did was technically something Rick did, because Rick literally built him to make Morty happy. Maybe Rick can do a little more himself. Rickbot dies very slowly while everyone watches awkwardly. After they return to Earth, Rick admits maybe the robot was right and he should have included Morty in his stuff. He invites Morty to help him. Rick shows Morty a wall covered in locations, not all the places Rick Prime could be, but all the places he is simultaneously. Rick Prime's incredibly crafty and hunting him destroyed Rick. Rick spent his life on this hunt, and this is the closest he's ever been to catching him. The task seems impossible, but now Rick wants to do it together with Morty. He warns Morty it'll take over his life. It's the most painful thing Rick's ever dealt with, and he's bringing Morty into it because Morty asked for it. Rick and Morty hunting his nemesis in Season 7, maybe trying to stay healthy while doing it, juggling plates, not every episode, but happening in the background. Rictional Mort Poons, Rickmas Mortcation, argues that obsession destroys your ability to connect with people you love. Rick's revenge quest against Rick Prime consumed him so completely that he had to build a robot replacement to handle basic family interactions. The robot was better at being Rick than Rick was, 22% more thoughtful, giving perfect gifts, playing games, being emotionally available. Real Rick was in the basement, staring at an impossible wall of locations, paralyzed by the scope of his hunt. The episode shows what happens when your white whale literally exists in multiple places simultaneously, making the hunt geometrically more impossible. Rick admits hunting Rick Prime destroyed him, past tense. He's already been destroyed by this obsession, and now he's inviting Morty into that same destruction, because Morty wanted to be included. Rick can't stop hunting Rick Prime even for Christmas, even for his family's happiness, even when a robot version of himself proves the family's better off without him. The revenge has become Rick's entire personality, to the point where removing it means removing Rick entirely. The robot dies, telling Morty that anything good the robot did was technically Rick doing it, which is either a generous interpretation or the saddest thing possible. Rick can only be good for his family when he's not actually present. The president's subplot mirrors Rick's obsession. The president's so consumed by his childhood relationship with Star Wars that he steals a lightsaber and fights a 14-year-old in space over franchise ownership. His rant about how the movies raised him and made having a bad father empowering, then got muppety and started rotting something inside him, is basically describing how nostalgia curdles into obsession. Both Rick and the president are chasing things from their past that can't be caught or reclaimed, and both are willing to destroy relationships in the present to keep chasing. The episode ends with Rick pulling Morty into his darkness, making the obsession a shared burden, which is either bringing Morty closer or damning him to the same fate. Rick needing a robot to handle basic family interaction looked pathetic until Beth shot Mr. Poopy Butthole in the chest for being too nice to them. Total Rickall is the episode where alien parasites implant fake positive memories into the Smith family's heads and multiply so fast that nobody can tell who's real anymore. Then Morty figures out the parasites can only create happy memories, so anyone you have bad memories with must be real, which means dysfunctional families are harder to infiltrate than happy ones. The episode opens with the family eating breakfast when Jerry mentions his brother Steve bought them all tickets to Paris as a thank you for letting him live with them for almost a year. This is Total Rickall from Season 2, Episode 4. Rick enters with glowing rocks, and Jerry complains about them being in the kitchen trash. Rick fires back that he doesn't like Jerry's unemployed genes and his grandchildren, but life is made of little concessions. Uncle Steve defends Jerry, saying some company will be lucky to hire his little brother. Rick asks who Steve is. Everyone insists Steve's been living there almost a year. Rick shoots Steve in the head. The family screams. Steve's corpse transforms into a blue and purple worm creature spewing pink liquid everywhere. Rick explains, "These are telepathic parasites that embed themselves in memories, use those to multiply and spread out to take over planets. Someone probably tracked one in on their shoe or on alien fruit." Morty protests that Uncle Steve taught him how to ride a bike. Rick explains Steve put that memory in his brain so he could live in their house, eat their food, and multiply. Rick does a head count and locks down the house with blast shields. There's 6 of them: Rick, Morty, Jerry, Beth, Mr. Poopy Butthole, and Summer. Mr. Poopy Butthole volunteers to help, and Rick thanks him because he can always count on him. The show doesn't indicate anything's wrong with Mr. Poopy Butthole being there. He's just suddenly part of the family, and nobody questions it. Rick warns they have to watch for any zany wacky characters that pop up. Mr. Poopy Butthole mentions this reminds him of when they all got stuck in an elevator together after the Hulk musical. The flashback shows the whole family, including Mr. Poopy Butthole, stuck in an elevator. Cousin Nikki appears in the elevator shaft to help them, doing a terrible Brooklyn accent. Back in the present, Nikki suggests getting fresh air. Rick shoots him in the shoulder because there's supposed to be 6 people, and if there's 7, then somebody's not real. Rick guessed it was Nikki, which is why he aimed for the shoulder. The episode spirals as more characters appear, each with their own elaborate backstories and flashbacks. Mr. Beauregard the butler saved them from Nazis with the staff of Ragu Baba. Frankenstein helped during various family crises. Photography Raptor took pictures. Sleepy Gary became Jerry's best friend and Beth's husband in everyone's memories. Pencil Vester is Rick's trusted pencil. The parasites are creating a Where's Waldo page of zany characters, each reinforcing the others through interconnected fake memories. Rick tries to maintain that there's only supposed to be 6 people, but discovers he wrote down that number during a flashback where there were already 10 people present. The parasites infected the memory of him, trying to count them. Beth suggests looking at photos for hard evidence, but nobody's in each other's pictures in ways that prove anything. Summer only has photos of herself and her friends from school, which everyone finds suspicious since her only friend appears to be Tinkles, a magic ballerina lamb they've never seen. Summer flashbacks to flying through Never Past Bedtime Land with Tinkles in a musical montage. Then Tinkles suddenly appears in the present, confirming she's real, which means Summer's real. The evidence keeps getting corrupted by new parasites, appearing to validate old parasites. Everyone starts questioning everyone else. Rick tries to shoot Summer to test his theory, but Sleepy Gary stops him, claiming Summer is his daughter. Rick realizes Gary might be a parasite, but Gary's been there for 15 years in Rick's memory. The parasites start pressuring Rick to remember the barbecues. Multiple characters chant for him to remember. Rick flashes back to being the grill master at a barbecue, surrounded by all these characters. He's having a great time, and everyone's cheering his name. Back in the present, Rick's panicking because the house is infested, and he can't tell who's real anymore. The parasites can only create pleasant memories, so they're piling on positive flashbacks to overwhelm everyone's ability to think critically. Reverse Giraffe makes a speech suggesting maybe they're all fake, or maybe Rick's the only fake one, since he's the person telling them not to trust each other. The family starts turning on Rick because his backstory is vague and his catchphrases sound made up. Morty takes Rick to the garage at gunpoint to force him to open the blast shields. Rick yells that Morty's a whiny little piece of garbage, and he's got about 1,000 memories of him, with maybe 6 being pleasant and the rest being annoying trash. He tells Morty to pull the trigger. Morty instead shoots Baby Wizard standing nearby. Baby Wizard transforms into a parasite. Morty shoots Duck with muscles when he mentions Baby Wizard set him up with his wife. Morty figured it out. The parasites can only create pleasant memories. He knows Rick's real because he has tons of bad memories with him. Flashbacks show Rick leaving Morty traumatized, scared, and crying across multiple adventures set to melancholy music. Rick realizes Morty's right and reveals a hidden arsenal of weapons. The family goes on a shooting spree, killing everyone they can only remember fondly. Mrs. Refrigerator tries to give a bad memory about a roller coaster, but roller coasters aren't bad, they're thrilling. Beth shoots her. They work through proving each family member is real, through bad memories. Summer's real because Morty remembers her kicking him in the crotch. Beth's real because Summer remembers her drunk mother accidentally hitting her in the face with a wine bottle on picture day. Jerry's real because Beth remembers him locking her out of the car while a homeless man chased her. Every Smith family member is authenticated through dysfunction and pain. Rick shoots Pencilvester when he can't think of a single awkward moment with him. Summer shoots Frankenstein and Tinkles without hesitation once she realizes they're only associated with positive memories. Beth shoots Sleepy Gary, Jerry's best friend and alternate husband, causing Jerry to cry that he wants to be with Gary, while Beth admits she needs time to forget about him too. Rick opens the blast shields, declaring they're real, and that's what matters. Jerry's depressed that they killed every good person in the house, and what's left is just them as a family. Mr. Poopy Butthole asks someone to pass him a pork chop. Beth shoots him in the chest. Mr. Poopy Butthole doesn't transform into a parasite. He bleeds and screams, very clearly a real person who just got shot. Jerry calls an ambulance, saying his wife shot a longtime family friend. Mr. Poopy Butthole's asking why this happened, and whether this is what bleeding to death feels like. Beth's crying in the kitchen, pouring wine everywhere with shaking hands. The episode ends at the hospital, where Mr. Poopy Butthole's doing physical therapy. He's not pressing charges, but told the doctor to tell Beth he's sorry she didn't have bad memories of him. If she loves him, she should leave. Total Rickall argues that nostalgia functions as an infection when it's purely positive. The parasites weaponize the human tendency to remember things as better than they were, creating false memories of adventures and bonding that never happened. Each fake memory reinforces the others until you can't distinguish between real experiences and implanted ones. The only immunity is dysfunction. Manny, having genuinely bad experiences with someone, proves the relationship is real because parasites can't create negative memories. This makes the Smith family's toxicity their greatest defense. Their willingness to hurt each other, disappoint each other, and fail each other repeatedly is what saves them from infiltration. Mr. Poopy Butthole being real is the episode's cruelest twist. He existed the entire time, was genuinely part of the family's life, but because he was only ever kind and supportive and positive, he registered as fake. Beth shot him because healthy relationships without conflict looked identical to parasite infections. The show's arguing that we've become so accustomed to dysfunction as proof of authenticity that unconditional positive regard seems suspicious. Mr. Poopy Butthole's only crime was being consistently nice, and that got him shot by someone he cared about. His hospital scene where he apologizes to Beth for not giving her bad memories to work with is devastating. He's sorry he wasn't mean enough to prove he was real. The episode examines how families authenticate themselves through shared trauma rather than shared joy. Every Smith family member proves they're real by recalling moments of humiliation, abandonment, or cruelty. Morty's validated through Rick's thousands of memories of annoying him. Summer's real because she's been a cruel sister. Beth's real because she's been a neglectful drunk mother. Jerry's real because he's a coward who locked Beth out of the car. Their worst moments are what prove they belong together, which is either the saddest commentary on family or the most honest, depending on your perspective. The parasites could fake countless adventures and bonding moments, but couldn't fake Jerry being useless, or Beth being an alcoholic, or Rick abandoning Morty in dangerous situations. The episode ends with the implication that purely positive memories should be treated as suspicious, that nostalgia without pain is probably fabricated, and that love without bad memories isn't love at all. Mr. Poopy Butthole recovers, but the relationship with the family is permanently damaged because Beth shot him based on the logic that anyone too good to be true probably isn't real. The show's saying dysfunction is how we know our connections are genuine, which explains why the Smiths stay together despite making each other miserable. Their shared misery is the only thing they can trust. Beth, shooting Mr. Poopy Butthole for being too nice, seemed paranoid, until Rick escaped a literal story train by accepting Jesus Christ, and the whole thing turned out to be a toy he wanted Morty to buy another one of. Never Ricking Morty is the episode where Rick and Morty get trapped on a literal story train that's an actual anthology device, containing them metaphorically, then escape by doing a Christian salvation story so terrible it traps Storylord in the Bible forever, revealing at the end that this all happened inside a toy train Morty bought from the Citadel gift shop. The episode opens on a space train where various aliens are telling stories about Rick Sanchez, each claiming they're going to kill him or that he saved their lives. This is Never Ricking Morty from Season 4, Episode 6. Rick and Morty are on the train in disguises, but don't recognize each other initially. Passengers keep forcing everyone to tell stories about Rick. The Ramamama leader describes Rick raiding his sanctum. A candy alien talks about Rick, saving space, Christmas. Goombie tells a depressing story about Rick not inviting him to a Christmas party. A passenger complains that everyone's obsessed with Rick Sanchez, and nobody even remembers getting on the train. Rick shoots someone who starts another Rick story, warning that the train is amplifying and linking unrelated narrative fields. If you think about a Rick story, you create one. Rick reveals himself and explains to Morty that this isn't a real train, it's a story device, literally a literary device, quite literally metaphorically, containing them. Rick explains, it's not a simulation but something worse, an anthology. They try confronting the Tickets Please guy to stop the anthology, but he's impossibly strong with what Morty calls cum gutters, the abdominal V-lines. Rick tries fighting him, but gets his butt kicked. The train has a structural breach and loses continuity. They fall through different narrative spaces, including a family at an arcade, where a dad has an existential crisis. Emergency continuity gets deployed. Train cops show up, demanding they tell a Rick Sanchez story. Rick realizes they're in trouble because they tampered with the anthology's structure. They escape during a training video that demonstrates proper train cop procedure, which itself becomes part of the narrative chaos they're trapped in. Rick maps out the train's structure using what they've learned. He shows Morty that the vignettes were in one section forming a circle, and the engine must be elsewhere. Rick plans to rig spacesuits that start failing so they can pay a heavy price for re-entering. Morty complains about how meta this is getting. Rick snaps that Morty's 14 and watches videos of people on YouTube reacting to YouTube, so Rick will be the judge of when they get too meta. They find someone suspended in disbelief, slowly dying while living out an alternative, non-diegetic reality. Rick makes jokes about the guy being torn in half. Morty laughs and compliments Rick on being naturally funny. They agree to keep things nice and grounded, fully immersive. Then they go into an act break with a musical number about being part bird and part person. The episode spirals through increasingly absurd narrative structures. There's a floaty Bloodman segment where the universe might be his nightmare as he dies in time-dilated reality. Followers try keeping him alive by suppressing sexual urges. Rick and Morty keep trying to reach the return threshold before their suit clocks hit 0. Rick realizes they need to disrupt the thematic seal by telling a story unrelated to them. Morty tries creating a story about Mike Johnson and scorpions, but it's terrible. Rick asks if Morty knows what the Bechdel test is, a formula for measuring female agency in stories. Morty doesn't know it. Rick panics that Morty's killed them both. The test requires 2 women with names talking to each other about something other than a man. Morty quickly improvises a story about Beth and Summer discussing tea and menstruation while fighting female scorpions, ending with them getting calls from a Supreme Court lady congratulating them. Rick sarcastically calls it a feminist masterpiece. Storylord reveals himself as the villain behind everything. Rick recognizes him as, like a Matrix space Frasier. Storylord monologues about how Rick spirals through the multiverse, burping semi-improvised dialogue about how nothing matters. Storylord complains that there are no rules for Rick while he has to follow narrative structure. They fight, but Rick and Morty surrender, refusing to engage with the combat narrative. Storylord beats them up anyway. The train keeps throwing them into different narrative scenarios: a war story, a scientific experiment, memories of alternative lives. Storylord explains he brought them there to fuel his anthology with their limitless potential, propelling it beyond the 5th wall. Rick warns that their potential isn't limitless, and Storylord will burn them out before breaking the 5th wall. Storylord starts extracting story potential from them. Rick and Morty experience various narratives: Morty going to college, Aberdolf Linkler returning alive, potential canon storylines playing out. Storylord laughs, asking if there are things Rick holds sacred after all. Rick and Morty are getting burned out with no way to escape. Then Rick has a revelation. He tells Morty that someone's always there for them, Jesus Christ. Morty's confused because Rick doesn't believe in God. Rick explains that the greatest invention is the free gift of eternal life, and it's never too late to accept Christ. They close their eyes and pray together, accepting Jesus into their hearts. Storylord screams that this sucks and they would never do this. Christian cartoon characters appear, congratulating them. Storylord insists this is the worst story, but gets sucked into the narrative anyway, screaming that it's awful. Rick explains to Morty that nobody ever wanted to see that story. Storylord gets trapped, spending eternity in every writer's hell, USL, the Bible. Morty thinks that seems cynical, and he doesn't like taking cheap shots. Rick points out they were literally saved by Jesus Christ. They agree they got all the meta-canon stuff out of the way and can just be themselves now. Cut to them back home. Morty asks Rick what he thinks of the train. Rick asks where Morty got it. Morty says, the citadel of Rick's gift shop. Rick loves it because Morty bought something with money. Rick goes on an extended monologue about loving money and merchandise, saying Morty's only purpose in life is to buy and consume merchandise. Morty just looked into the bleeding jaws of capitalism and said yes. Rick tells Morty to give Grandpa a kiss, lips if he wants, whatever he's comfortable with. Then the train derails itself with blood everywhere. Rick tells Morty to buy another one because nobody's shopping during the virus. The episode ends with a commercial for the Story Train toy, where Rick explicitly tells viewers to buy it, that not buying it is an act of buying it, and provides the actual website. Never Ricking Morty argues that we're all trapped in narrative structures whether we realize it or not. Rick and Morty can't escape the story train by fighting it conventionally. Every action they take just creates more story. The only way out is doing something so narratively bankrupt that even Story Lord, who literally feeds on stories, rejects it. The Christian salvation story works because it's a deus ex machina in the most literal sense, God from the machine, solving everything through prayer. Story Lord can't fuel his anthology with that because it's creatively worthless, which traps him inside it forever. The show's eating itself by being so meta that the characters are aware they're in an anthology commenting on anthology episodes, while trapped in a literal anthology device. The episode questions whether we're trapped in our own narratives. Storylord represents the tyranny of story structure. You know, see, everything has to follow rules, have proper beats, pay off setups. Rick and Morty represent chaos and improvisation, but even they can't fully escape narrative gravity. When Rick tries mapping the train's structure, he's literally trying to deconstruct the story they're in. When Morty attempts creating an unrelated story about Mike Johnson and scorpions, it fails because Morty's not a writer, and the story is deliberately terrible. But that terribleness almost works because it doesn't mesh with the train's themes. The Bechdel test scene is the show mocking itself for having so few female-focused stories that they need Morty to quickly improvise one about menstruation and Supreme Court ladies. The reveal that this all happened inside a toy train Morty bought reframes everything. The existential nightmare of being trapped in narrative hell was actually just a Citadel product malfunctioning. But then Rick's monologue about merchandise and consumption suggests maybe that's the real horror, not being trapped in stories, but being trapped in capitalism. Rick's speech about Morty's only purpose being to buy and consume merchandise is the show addressing its own commercialization. The commercial at the end, where Rick desperately begs viewers to buy the story train, makes it explicit. The entire episode was an advertisement wrapped in meta-commentary, wrapped in narrative deconstruction. Not buying the train is an act of buying it. Looking it up online means you're engaging with the product. The show trapped you in its narrative, the same way Story Lord trapped Rick and Morty. Rick turning the show into a merchandise commercial looked cynical, until a detox machine revealed his entire capacity to love Morty lives in the toxic parts he wants removed. Rest and Ricklaxation is the episode where Rick and Morty go to an alien spa and use a detoxifier that splits them into healthy and toxic versions. Except healthy Morty becomes a confident sociopath who abandons Jessica for a stockbroker career, while toxic Rick turns out to be the part that actually gives a shit about anything, proving you can't remove your damage without removing what makes you human. The episode opens after a 6-day adventure where Rick and Morty barely escape with their lives, both screaming and crying in their spaceship about how they almost died and can't do this anymore. This is Rest and Ricklaxation from Season 3, Episode 6. Rick admits he might hate himself and think he deserves to die. They're both completely traumatized, with Rick's hands shaking uncontrollably. Rick decides they need a vacation. They go to an alien spa where creatures swallow stressed people for 20 minutes, then puke them up relaxed. Rick and Morty walk around trying different treatments. An alien worker offers a complimentary psychological detox that removes all cognitive toxins. Rick's annoyed by the worker's throat-clearing sounds and insults him aggressively. Morty drags Rick into the detox room, saying he needs to chill. The machine starts shaking violently and explodes with white light. Cut to toxic Rick, waking up in a disgusting mucky wasteland. He's made of the same gunk as his surroundings. He finds toxic Morty almost completely sunk in the mud and yanks him out. Toxic Morty asks what happened. Toxic Rick screams that they blew up because the guy Rick yelled at overloaded the machine. Toxic creatures start attacking them. Toxic Rick realizes they're inside the detoxifier. The machine didn't blow up. It worked normally. They are the toxins that got removed. Toxic Morty screams in terror, while Toxic Rick explains they're what got removed from the healthy versions. Healthy Rick and Healthy Morty walk out of the room, completely relaxed and pleasant. Rick apologizes for his comments about the worker's throat. They drive home listening to random music and discussing algorithms for happiness. Rick tells Morty he's proud to be his grandpa. Morty says he loves Rick. Meanwhile, in the toxic wasteland, Toxic Rick's being aggressively brilliant, discovering new elements and inventing the toxic equivalent of electricity while insulting Toxic Morty constantly. Toxic Morty sits there, making pottery, saying his voice is annoying and agreeing it's his best quality. At school, Healthy Morty's become incredibly confident. He insults Mr. Goldenfold and gets the class dismissed. Students love him. He helps people with advice, encourages a kid playing trombone, takes a girl's hat off so she can be herself. A bully thanks Morty for showing him he's not alone in faking confidence. Jessica mentions Morty's become super healthy. Morty asks her to dinner with a joke about having taken you to dinneritis. Rick shows up needing Morty's help. Rick's been receiving transmissions from the spa, 7TH, It's Toxic Rick calling them assholes and garbage, while Toxic Morty says he doesn't like confrontation. Rick worries that their toxic parts have their own identities and will to live, and his toxic part shares his intelligence. Morty breaks Rick's phone and tells him to focus on the good things, insisting things are good and taking that away wouldn't be healthy. Morty takes Jessica to dinner. He's obnoxiously confident, drumming on the table, talking about limitations being addictive, ordering just water. Jessica tries talking, but Morty dominates the conversation, asking rapid-fire questions about Planet Jessica. He bashes the table, startling her, and insists she needs to do the detox thing he did, because it sucked everything bad out of him. Jessica awkwardly says she has to leave. Morty's completely unbothered, saying, "First date no sparks, life is a highway." He immediately hits on Stacy at the bar, with an incredibly sexual monologue about wanting to please her. She agrees to go home with him. Rick went back to the spa and bought the detoxifier containment unit. Toxic Rick appears on screen, saying they're coming home. He shows Toxic Morty, who's begging not to be on camera because he's ugly and gross. Morty asks if Rick's trying to put that stuff back inside them. Rick says that stuff is alive and belongs with them. They yanked them from their homes and locked them in a can. Morty argues they live in pain. They are pain. They're all the bad parts, including dishonesty, so this might be a trick. Toxic. Rick protests that just because he's made of toxins doesn't make him a liar. Rick needs Morty to step into the booth. Toxic Rick tells Healthy Rick to show dominance and shoves Toxic Morty into the booth. Rick tries forcing Morty, but Stacy pulls them out. The gas whirls around Stacy, and Toxic Rick and Toxic Morty escape while trapping Rick and Stacy inside the containment unit. Toxic Rick reveals he lied about merging. He just wanted to trap them. Rick and Toxic Rick fight. Toxic Rick's winning easily, beating the shit out of Rick while insulting him. He releases a creature that grows when you love it and tries to kill Rick. Rick injects himself with something that makes a baby Rick burst from his chest at normal age, while Toxic Rick does the same, bursting from the creature. Toxic Morty crashes through with the spaceship. Beth walks in, confused seeing two dads. Toxic Rick decides on plan B. If he can't trap them in a toxic world, he'll make the whole world toxic. He crashes the ship through the roof. Rick realizes the detox machine must work by each individual's own definition of toxicity. He slaps Morty, who calls Rick a useless old turd, confirming Healthy Morty's concept of health is completely different from Rick's. Toxic Rick builds a toxifier on a moon tower that sends toxic rays across Earth. A priest declares God is a lie. Teenagers abandon salad for fast food. A mascot at a kid's party reveals Santa isn't real before getting stabbed by children. Rick and Morty arrive with jetpacks. Rick shoots Toxic Morty with an encrypted nanobotic virus that will disintegrate him in 20 minutes unless Toxic Rick merges and gets the decryption key. Toxic Rick initially refuses, but Rick keeps shooting Toxic Morty, cutting his time in half. Rick explains he had all his problems removed: his entitlement, narcissism, crippling loneliness, irrational attachments. Toxic Rick kneels with Toxic Morty, asking if he's okay, calling him Grandpa. Rick laughs, saying Toxic Rick's literally incapable of seeing the bigger picture. Toxic Rick surrenders, and Rick reabsorbs him, reversing the toxicity beam. Morty flies away, refusing to remerge. Rick says that kid's a real piece of shit. He injects Toxic Morty anyway. Cut to Healthy Morty working as a stockbroker in a skyscraper, living with a successful redhead named Jacqueline. Jessica calls, saying she misses him. Morty says she misses the old him who loved her so much she never had to love him back. Rick and Jessica crash through with drones, and Rick forcibly re-injects Morty. Jessica admits she only did this for Rick because he kept drunk dialing her, crying about getting a new Morty. Morty apologizes to Jacqueline, saying he wasn't who he said he was. She points out he was completely upfront about being a 14-year-old runaway who became a stockbroker by capitalizing on his lack of conscience. She calls him her soulmate, but Morty says, not anymore. Rest and Ricklaxation argues that you can't excise your damage without excising yourself. The detoxifier worked exactly as advertised, 19.2. It removed cognitive toxins based on each person's individual definition of toxicity. For Rick, toxicity meant his self-hatred, his loneliness, his irrational attachments to people. For Morty, toxicity meant his insecurity, his neediness, his empathy. What got removed wasn't the bad parts, it was the human parts. Healthy Rick became a pleasant, accountable person who apologizes and makes scallopini, but no longer has the driving force that makes him Rick. Healthy Morty became supremely confident and successful, but completely sociopathic, incapable of genuine connection. The episode's cruelest revelation is that Toxic Rick is the part of Rick that actually loves Morty. When Healthy Rick shoots Toxic Morty repeatedly, Toxic Rick breaks. He kneels with toxic Morty, calling him Grandpa, showing genuine care and protection. All of Rick's capacity for love lives in the toxic part he tried to remove. His loneliness, his irrational attachments, his self-hatred, these aren't obstacles to loving people, they're prerequisites. You can't love someone without the vulnerability to be hurt by losing them. You can't care about someone without the irrational attachment that makes you prioritize them over logic. Toxic Rick, ranting about being a genius and a god, is the same part that drops everything to comfort a dying Morty. The same applies to Morty. Toxic Morty is empathetic, anxious, believes he's worthless, and everyone hates him. Healthy Morty is confident, successful, completely emotionally unavailable. He hits on women with scripted speeches about wanting to worship them, but refuses actual intimacy. When Jessica says she wants to love him, he dismisses her because he's not sick anymore, as if needing love is a disease. He's thriving professionally while being fundamentally incapable of human connection. His stockbroker girlfriend thinks he's perfect specifically because he was upfront about capitalizing on his lack of conscience. The empathy Morty thought was weakness turned out to be what made him capable of loving Jessica. The show's arguing that self-improvement culture sells a lie when it promises you can remove your negative qualities and keep the positive ones. Morty's insecurity and neediness weren't separate from his capacity to love, but they were the same thing viewed from different angles. Rick's self-loathing and loneliness weren't obstacles to caring about his family, they were evidence he already did. The things we call toxic often aren't poisons to be extracted, but vital organs keeping us alive. Healthy Morty, living alone in a tower with someone who loves him for lacking conscience, isn't an improvement over toxic Morty crying in the mud. It's just a different kind of hell where you don't feel anything anymore. That's it for today. If you want more videos like these, subscribe to our channel.